Chapter 1. Ah Qing, are you really pregnant with his child? Mu Lin looked at Xiao Qing in surprise. She had grown up with Xiao Qing, so no one knew Xiao Qing's character better than she did. She and Xiao Qing were both abandoned when they were young. Although they were taken in by an orphanage, the orphanage was not as good as most people thought. On the contrary, it was very dark. The old women who took care of the children often beat or scolded the children. It was common for children to not have enough to eat, not to mention the ostracism between the children. Xiao Qing hated the people who abandoned her, so she did not want to have a child easily. She was afraid that she could not bear the weight of a newborn. Moreover, how could people like her and Xiao Qing fall in love with the same man? So much so that they were willing to have a child for him? Yes. Xiao Qing stroked her protruding belly, her eyes filled with a gentleness that could melt an iceberg. She had never thought that having a child who was related to her by blood would be such a blissful thing. She had prayed countless times for this child to come into the world early. Then, she imagined that in the future, she, the child, and Lin Qifan's family of 3 would be so happy. Mu Lin stirred the coffee in her cup and considered her words carefully. After a while, she said in a low voice, Ah Qing, you have to know that in our line of work, how can we quit just because we want to? I've done enough for them. If they're willing to let me quit the organization, everyone will be happy. If they don't... Xiao Lin, do you think I'm the kind of person who makes decisions without any preparation? Xiao Qing said coldly. She had served in the military before. Because of her outstanding memory, sharp senses, and excellent physical fitness, she was transferred to the Special Forces. Later, she retired due to injury. Xiao Qing's education was not high and she did not have any special skills. After she retired from the military, she could not change her job. Coincidentally, Mu Lin joined the organization because of her amazing hacking skills, so she pulled Xiao Qing into the organization. Money laundering, arms trafficking, Xiao Qing's contributions to the organization were not small. Her only worry was that the organization would not let go of her, an outstanding subordinate. Qing, be careful. Mu Lin bit his lip. I'll go back to the headquarters immediately and contact the team leader. If I can help you, I'll help you. Thank you. Xiao Qing said sincerely. Mu Lin pouted and said unhappily, What kind of relationship do we have? Do you still need to thank me? What's there to be polite about? But... She hesitated for a moment before handing a few photos to Xiao Qing. Even though you're pregnant and shouldn't be too emotional, you should still take a look. Xiao Qing frowned slightly. She took the photo and glanced at it. She froze. The main character in the photo was none other than her lover, Lin Qifan. There were more than a dozen photos, and the female lead was the same person. She had short hair and a pretty face. Most importantly, she looked familiar. She had seen this woman's photo on Lin Qifan's phone before. At that time, Lin Qifan had said that she was his superior's daughter. They had met during a social gathering and chatted for a while. Xiao Qing did not think much of it. Instead, she felt bad that Lin Qifan had to attend social gatherings for the sake of his career. Lin Qifan was not a rich second-generation heir. The university that he graduated from was not particularly good. Naturally, he had to put in more effort to succeed. Xiao Qing did not expect that Lin Qifan would take a shortcut. Looking at the intimate couple in the photo, Xiao Qing felt her heart ache. This was his superior's daughter? Mu Lin said worriedly, Qing, don't be too sad. Let's ask him clearly first. Okay. Xiao Qing calmed down quickly and touched her belly. She had a child. She could not be too emotional. It was not good for the child. I'll leave first. Take care. Mu Lin picked up her bag. She was also very sad. If Xiao Qing had found a man who loved her very much, even if Xiao Qing gave up everything and left the organization for this man, Mu Lin would still be very happy. Xiao Qing had found a good home. But now... Chapter 2. Drive Safe. Xiao Qing forced herself to say this before she watched Mu Lin leave. She sat there for a long time, looking at the photos again and again like she was torturing herself. Her love with Lin Qifan was like a fairy tale. Lin Qifan saved her when she was injured and Xiao Qing was touched by his gentleness. She fell in love and got married. It was only natural. But now, the past seemed to have become a joke. Xiao Qing sat there until she calmed down. Then, she slowly stood up and walked out while holding her stomach. No matter what, the baby was the most important thing. It was almost time for her to give birth. No matter what, she had to wait until after the baby was born. Xiao Qing hailed a taxi to go to the hospital for another checkup. Before the taxi reached her, an ear-piercing screech sounded from behind her. Xiao Qing wanted to dodge, but her body was heavy. How could she dodge the car that was speeding towards her? The moment she was hit, Xiao Qing tried her best to protect her stomach. Her baby. No. The moment she landed, Xiao Qing clearly saw the young woman in the driver's seat smiling innocently. Her face was still in the photo in her bag. Xiao Qing glared at the young woman, but all she could do was watch her drive away. The pain in her stomach was like waves, wave after wave. She opened her mouth, but her voice was as weak as a mosquito's wings. Save. My baby. Save. The passers-by looked at her with pity, but no one stopped for her. Instead, they quickly walked away as if they were afraid of getting into trouble. Xiao Qing was filled with hatred. She hated Lin Qifan, she hated the young woman, and she even hated these heartless people. She didn't care if she died, but her baby had never seen the world. Xiao Qing's vision became more and more blurry. She could clearly feel the blood flowing down from her thigh. Suddenly, a drop of water fell into her eye socket. It turned red, and she heard a cry of surprise. Oh, the rain is red. I've never seen red rain before. Was the heavens crying blood for her? Xiao Qing slowly closed her eyes. If there was a next life, she would definitely kill that adulterous couple. The basement level of a hospital was usually the morgue. Most of the paranormal incidents in hospitals were related to the morgue. It was probably because the morgue was too eerie and had something to do with corpses. It's too tragic. One corpse, two lives. Have you caught the culprit? Who knows? Look, no one came to collect the corpse. The voice gradually faded away. In Xiao Qing's ears, it was as if the wind had blown it away. She tried hard to open her eyes, but there was only blood in front of her. Xiao Qing remembered that she was dead. That car accident, her child. That's right. Her child. Xiao Qing stretched out her hands stiffly and brushed away the ice. She wanted to touch her belly, but her bulging belly moved on its own. There was a bulge here and there, as if something was moving around in her belly. Xiao Qing didn't have time to think about why she wasn't dead. Her heart was filled with joy. Was her child still alive? Xiao Qing lifted her clothes and saw that her round belly was greenish-gray. It was wriggling continuously. It must be her child. It must be her child. Xiao Qing wanted to cry, but no tears fell. She was a little flustered. How could she get her child out? Her child, in that dark and narrow space, must be very scared. Xiao Qing rubbed her belly as she thought. At this moment, she realized that her fingernails had become long and their color had turned greenish-black. One look and you could tell that they were very sharp. Xiao Qing looked at her fingernails expressionlessly. Suddenly, she stretched out her hand and slit her belly. Her thin belly was indeed slit open, but there was no blood. Instead, a white and chubby little hand reached out from the slit. My child! Xiao Qing was very surprised. She watched as the little hand opened her belly and a chubby baby climbed out with difficulty. The baby wasn't wrinkled like a newborn baby at all. Instead, it was white and its face was pink. Other than one eye that was as black as a black hole, there was no white. It was completely like an ordinary child. He tilted his head and his eyes reflected Xiao Qing's sorry state. He bit his little finger and shouted at Xiao Qing, "Mama! Baby, my baby!" Xiao Qing hugged the little bun. She didn't realize that the big slit on her belly was slowly healing. She anxiously kissed the little bun's face. The joy of regaining what she had lost and the light after the despair almost drove her crazy. The little bun also obediently wrapped his arms around his mama's neck. His little but twisted in Xiao Qing's palm. Mama's kisses tickled him. After kissing the little bun and calming down, Xiao Qing realized that there wasn't even a scar on her belly, let alone a slit. Something was definitely wrong. Could it be that she was a ghost now? Or a zombie? It's cold in here. Baby, don't worry. Mama will take you out now. Xiao Qing suppressed the doubts in her heart. She pushed hard and pushed the place she was lying in. When she came out with the baby, she realized that she was lying in the freezer that contained the corpse. She was really dead. No matter what the reason was, she was still standing here, still breathing, and still holding her baby. She had to thank the heavens for all of this. The heavens must have pitied her and allowed her to return to this cold world, giving her a chance to take revenge. Mama, baby is hungry. The little bun pouted and looked pitifully at Xiao Qing. Xiao Qing, who felt sorry for the baby, was immediately melted. She kissed the little bun's face again. Baby, be good. Once we get out, you'll have something to eat. She just didn't know if she could produce milk in her current condition. If she couldn't, it would be a lot more troublesome. When she left the morgue, Xiao Qing discovered that her strength had increased by a lot, and her body had also become much lighter. These changes had all come so suddenly. If only there was a mirror at this time, she could also see if there were any changes to her current appearance. When Xiao Qing reached the first floor, she realized that she wasn't the only one who had changed. The moment she closed her eyes, the world had completely changed. Heaven and earth were turned upside down. Chapter 3. As soon as the elevator door opened, a skinny greenish-black claw reached in. Its long nails were still stained with flesh and blood, followed by half a head. Why was it half a head? Because a part of that thing's head had been cut off by something. From the cut, black brain matter could be seen wriggling. Xiao Qing was shocked. She subconsciously punched the head. Then, she saw the head fall to the ground like a ripe apple. Her strength was so great. Xiao Qing didn't have time to be surprised. She looked at the corridor. The floor was covered in dirty blood, minced meat, and broken limbs. There were also some mutilated corpses, as if they had been bitten by some wild beast. If these things surprised Xiao Qing, then the other things frightened her. In addition to the corpses on the floor, there were also moving things. Their faces were full of rotten flesh, and their limbs were stiff as they wandered in the corridor. Some of them were wearing hospital gowns, while others were wearing nurse uniforms. It was obvious that they were all doctors and patients of the hospital when they were alive. Was this the end of the world? Xiao Qing suddenly remembered the blood rain she saw before she died. It probably wasn't God crying for her, but God's punishment for this world. Xiao Qing held the child in her arms tightly. She smashed the fire hydrant with one hand and took out the fire extinguisher. She held it like a hammer, guarding against the group of monsters at all times. Baby, don't be afraid. After comforting little Bun in a soft voice, Xiao Qing realized that the zombies weren't like in Resident Evil, where they would pounce and bite any living person they saw. Instead, they were wandering around as if she didn't exist, or as if she was one of their kind. Xiao Qing touched her chest. She couldn't feel her heart beating. She smiled bitterly. She wasn't a living person. Maybe she was now like these monsters. No longer caring about what happened, Xiao Qing carried the little Bun and walked out. She had to see if this was only the hospital or the whole world. The little Bun lay on Xiao Qing's shoulder. His eyes were rolling. He wasn't afraid at all. The mother and son soon arrived at the entrance of the hospital. As Xiao Qing expected, the outside world had been occupied by zombies. It seemed that it was the end of the world. Baby, are you afraid? Xiao Qing gently stroked the little Bun's back. Only then did she find that her son was still naked. The little Bun obediently kissed Xiao Qing and said in a childish voice, "Mama, I'm not afraid." Xiao Qing's heart was sour. She took the little bun to a clothing store. She picked a lot of children's clothes for the little bun to wear. However, there were too many things. Xiao Qing couldn't carry them all. If there was a bag or something, it would be easier. Xiao Qing thought. The clothes in her hand suddenly disappeared. She was surprised and happy. Did she have a space like in some novels? Xiao Qing closed her eyes and tried to sense if there was a so-called space. Then she really saw a space, but it was only 1 cubic meter big. A pile of clothes took up half of the space. Although it wasn't as vast as in novels, where there were all kinds of plants and people could be brought in, it could at least store some daily necessities. Xiao Qing was satisfied. She put away some of her clothes, some food, and some milk powder before leaving with little bun. Mama, where are we going? The little bun blinked his big shining eyes and asked. Xiao Qing took a look at the mirror. Although the woman in the mirror was pale, she didn't turn into a zombie. As long as she wasn't touched intimately, she shouldn't be discovered. She was relieved. Let's go to the capital. Chapter 4. Jing City was the capital of Z country. Although the population was large, the important leaders and military were there. Even during the apocalypse, Jing City was believed to be the most orderly place. Xiao Qing still had a child to raise. It should be better to go there. They were now in S City. Although S City was not far from Jing City, it was still very troublesome to go to Jing City without a plane or train. Fortunately, Xiao Qing did not have to worry about zombie attacks. This made her journey much safer. However, after walking for a short while, Xiao Qing was dumbfounded. In the beginning, she would only occasionally hear a soft grumbling sound, but she didn't think much of it until she realized that the grumbling sound was coming from her arms. She was stunned and asked, "Is the baby hungry?" Little Bun's face was a little red. He whispered, "Not very hungry, Mama." Then his stomach growled. "I'm sorry, baby. I neglected." Xiao Qing quickly found a house and found hot water to make milk for Little Bun. However, Little Bun forced himself to take a sip and spat it out. He rolled in Xiao Qing's arms. "Mama, my stomach hurts, it hurts. Baby." Xiao Qing was so anxious that her eyes turned red. How could this be? Little Bun cried in pain. However, because of his constitution, he could not shed tears. He only felt better after he had spat out all the milk. Xiao Qing was very distressed. She blamed herself. Baby, it's Mama's fault. Mama, don't cry." Little Bun considerately kissed Xiao Qing. Xiao Qing also knew that her baby was different. She could not raise him as an ordinary child. However, seeing that her baby was hungry, how could she not think of a way? Xiao Qing found meat for Little Bun. However, Little Bun still vomited after eating. Xiao Qing's heart was twitching. If she could, she was even willing to give her meat to her baby. What should we do? Xiao Qing, who had always been a tough woman, was so anxious that she was about to cry. Her baby, her sweetheart, it was all because of that adulterous couple. She and her baby were neither human nor ghost. Mom will think of a way. Xiao Qing put aside those grudges and picked up Little Bun. She needed to find some zombies to observe. Xiao Qing felt that Little Bun's body should be similar to that of zombies. But before she could catch a few zombies, she heard gunshots outside. Xiao Qing squinted her eyes and looked down from the window. A Hummer passed by downstairs. There were several people sitting in the car. One of them reached out and a ball of flame appeared, burning several zombies that were chasing the car. Perhaps she also needed a car. As Xiao Qing was thinking, she saw someone waving at her from the car. "Are you a survivor?" Xiao Qing thought for a moment and replied, "Yes, are you here to save us?" "Yes, we are here to save people." The car stopped downstairs. 5 people got off and quickly went upstairs. Xiao Qing opened the door for them. The first person who came in was a middle-aged man. He looked dignified, but his eyes were not serious. He glanced around and when his eyes fell on Xiao Qing, he was surprised. "Are you alone?" Yes. Xiao Qing's face was pale, as if she was really frightened. What happened outside? How could this happen? Don't be afraid. We are all paranormals. We can protect you. There is a survivor base outside the city. You will be fine once you get there. The man said and signaled the people behind him to close the door. A young man with dyed blonde hair laughed sinisterly. Boss, don't pretend to be serious. Anyway, it's the end of the world. Hurry up and have fun. Our brothers are waiting. We haven't touched a woman for a long time. Chapter 5. Xiao Qing's face instantly turned pale and bloodless. She didn't want her child to be a man-eating monster. At that moment, she wanted to cry. She had once looked forward to the birth of her child, but the birth of the baby was completely different from what she had imagined. Without the company of her family, she dug out her child in the hospital morgue with her own hands. But even if her child was different from others, Xiao Qing still wanted her child to grow up happily and not become a monster. Just as Xiao Qing's thoughts were running wild, Little Bun was already staring at the head of the corpse on the ground with teary eyes. He still couldn't express what he wanted, and could only point and say, "It's fragrant." Xiao Qing didn't know what to do, but she was still a decisive person. She quickly calmed down. God pitied her and allowed her to crawl out of hell for revenge. Now, she only cared about her child. Why would she care if her child became a man-eating monster? Were they still normal people? Xiao Qing looked at her slender black fingernails. The light in her eyes became colder and colder. Her voice was low but gentle. "Baby, what do you want to eat?" Little Bun was a little anxious. He kept gesturing. "Inside. Inside." Xiao Qing looked at where Little Bun was pointing. She reached out with her slender fingernails and inserted them into the soft part of the skull. When her fingernails went in, she touched something hard. Xiao Qing had a flash of inspiration and pulled it out. There was a red crystal lying between his bloody fingers. It was only the size of a fingernail, but it was very shiny and beautiful. Little Bun's eyes lit up. "Mama, eat. I want to eat." After confirming that her son didn't want to eat human flesh but this crystal, Xiao Qing let out a sigh of relief. Even if her son wanted to eat human flesh, she could harden her heart and hunt humans for him. But there would always be a knot in her heart. Now that she found out that her son's food wasn't what she had imagined, her heart relaxed a little. Worried that her son would have a stomachache if he ate the bloody crystal, Xiao Qing washed it repeatedly with water before handing it to Little Bun. After Little Bun held the crystal in his hand, Xiao Qing began to look for crystals in the skulls of the other corpses. She found that not everyone had crystals in their heads. The crystals also came in different colors. She guessed that only people with superpowers would have crystals in their heads. Those with strong superpowers would have bigger crystals, and those with weak superpowers would have smaller crystals. Crystals with different superpowers had different colors. For example, the red crystal just now. Its owner was the one with the fireball. Little Bun was full after eating 2 crystals. Xiao Qing was going to put the last crystal. Little Baozi urged Xiao Qing, "Mama, eat too." Xiao Qing was stunned. She could eat it too? Little Bun was actually holding the crystal in his hand to absorb it. Xiao Qing didn't want to touch Little Bun's food, but she had a feeling that if she could absorb the crystal, it would be good for her to improve her strength. Only when her strength improved could she hunt more superpowers for Little Bun. Xiao Qing held the cyan crystal. She closed her eyes to feel it. Soon, she found that there was a faint cyan light in the crystal. Soon, the cyan light entered her body through her palm. Xiao Qing didn't notice that the dark red in her eyes was fading away. She only felt that the irritation in her heart was lessening. Soon, the crystal turned into a pile of gray powder. The wind blew it away. Xiao Qing clenched her fists. She felt that her body had become stronger. Ignoring the corpses on the ground, Xiao Qing carried Little Bun downstairs. The off-road vehicle those people drove was still downstairs. It provided Xiao Qing and Little Bun with transportation. After all, It was tiring to leave the city and go to other places by walking. Xiao Qing got into the car and looked at the gas gauge. There was not much gas left in the car. There were a few empty barrels in the back seat. Those people were probably going to the gas station to get some gas on their way back. 4 ordinary people, going deep into a zombie-infested city was almost certain death, but for Xiao Qing, it was simply too easy. She took Little Bun directly to the gas station. After filling up the car with gas, she also filled up a few empty barrels before preparing to leave. But when she was about to get in the car, she heard fighting in the corner. Xiao Qing looked up. It was a group of zombies fighting. She had never seen zombies fighting. Could it be that zombies also preyed on other zombies? Feeling that something was wrong, Xiao Qing didn't get in the car. Instead, she stood on the side and observed. Xiao Qing found that the group of zombies fighting was actually one of the zombies constantly killing other zombies. There were a few zombies lying on the ground with their heads broken. In the end, the zombies were all killed by this zombie. Then, the zombie began to dig out the heads of the other zombies. Could it be that there were crystals in the heads of zombies? Xiao Qing's interest was quickly piqued. She tried to get closer, but then she saw the strange zombie quickly turn its head, its dark eyes looking at Xiao Qing with a vigilant gaze. Xiao Qing found that this zombie was different from other zombies. Its face was different from other zombies. There was no rotten flesh or damage. Although it was dirty, but if she looked carefully, she found that except for its ugly face, it didn't have the most obvious features of a zombie. Moreover, it was much more sensitive than other zombies. It was probably smart. Otherwise, it wouldn't have found that there was something in the zombie's head and actively come out to kill other zombies. Seeing that Xiao Qing didn't get closer, it didn't relax. Instead, it quickly searched all the zombies' heads. After collecting a few gray crystals, it watched Xiao Qing slowly retreat. How could Xiao Qing let it go? Just now, when this zombie was fighting with the other zombies, she also saw it. She estimated the strength of the two sides and quickly took action, because she thought that the higher the level of the zombie, the bigger the crystal in the head of this zombie. The crystal in the head of this zombie was definitely enough for her son to eat a meal. How could she let go of such a good prey? So Xiao Qing quickly made a move. She quickly went forward when the zombie was about to turn around and run away. However, this zombie was more flexible than other zombies. After hearing the sound, it didn't even look at Xiao Qing and started to run. It probably wanted to find a place to eat and digest the crystal first. Xiao Qing didn't expect it to run away directly. She was stunned for a moment. She looked at the baby in the car behind her and gave up chasing. She went back to the car with some regret. Xiao Qing took the baby and walked out. After walking for about 10 minutes, Xiao Qing kept feeling that something was watching her in the dark. When she looked in the mirror, that strange zombie was actually still following behind the car. Chapter 6. Xiao Qing had an intuition that she wanted to use this zombie as food, and this zombie also wanted to use her as food. Squinting her eyes, Xiao Qing secretly calculated how to catch this smart zombie. She was after all a human, and if she lost to a zombie in terms of brain, that would be really embarrassing. Xiao Qing leisurely walked for more than 2 hours. Seeing that it was already afternoon, she had to find a place to rest. After all, she would also be tired. Even if her body wasn't that tired, her mind was already tired. Xiao Qing found a small shop. There weren't many zombies inside, so it was quickly cleaned up. After cleaning up, Xiao Qing carried Little Bun inside. At night, Xiao Qing, who was sleeping lightly, was acutely aware that there was a noise by the door. During the day, she used a wooden stick to block the door, so the noise lasted for a while before it stopped. After a while, a figure climbed in through the window. Xiao Qing deliberately left the window open. When the figure gradually came closer, the already awake Xiao Qing quickly got up and directly pushed him to the ground. Xiao Qing didn't know what would happen to her body after being bitten by a zombie, so she didn't dare to take the risk. She quickly grabbed the 2 arms of the zombie in front of her and snapped them. Then, the moment the zombie tried to raise its head to bite her, Xiao Qing stuffed a new sock into it. 2 minutes later, The zombie that was tied up like a fried dough twist was wriggling on the ground like a silkworm, but no matter what it did, it couldn't break free. Xiao Qing moved closer to take a look. The zombie's body looked like an 18 or 19-year-old boy. Its appearance was quite delicate, but unfortunately, it was no longer human. She carried little Bun, who was still sleeping, to the corner and continued to sleep. She was going to wait until the next day to think about how to deal with this relatively strange zombie. Early the next morning, Xiao Qing woke up to see the zombie curled up in the corner. It was curled up into a small ball, looking very pitiful. Xiao Qing first absorbed a piece of gray crystal taken from the zombie's body. After confirming that it wouldn't have any adverse effects on the body, she gave little Bun a few. After she found that zombies also had crystals in their bodies, she hunted some zombies. Xiao Qing found that most zombies didn't have crystals in their bodies. Only a few of them had crystals. In this way, she had to stay in the city for a few more days to collect some crystals and then leave with little Bun. After all, hunting zombies was always easier than hunting people with superpowers. Thinking like this, she prepared to kill this zombie, and then go out to find food for little Bun. Once she got close to the zombie, it woke up, continuously making woo-woo-woo sounds, as if it was threatening Xiao Qing. To threaten Xiao. Xiao Qing squatted down, one hand reaching out to the zombie's head. It was indeed smarter than other zombies. It knew that Xiao Qing wanted to kill it. Its originally ferocious appearance suddenly changed. It wriggled back, and made weak, please sounds. Although its eyes were already black and gray, it made people feel that there was a light shining inside. Xiao Qing's raised hand paused, and she hesitated. The reason why she didn't immediately kill this zombie was that this strange zombie gave her a feeling that it was the same kind of zombie. She was a different kind of human being, and he was a different kind of zombie. However, if she took a zombie with her, no matter where she went, it would be inconvenient, so Xiao Qing prepared to kill it. But looking at the zombie's struggling appearance, Xiao Qing couldn't help but think of the time when she was lying in a pool of blood, and also wanted to live. Can you understand the human language? Xiao Qing softened her movements, and touched the zombie's soft long hair. That zombie probably didn't understand Xiao Qing's words, but it could feel that Xiao Qing's killing intent was slowly dissipating. It hurriedly rubbed its head against Xiao Qing's palm, indicating that it was very obedient. Xiao Qing sighed, and sat next to the zombie. Before leaving this city, follow me, and I'll give you a quarter of the crystal stones. Looking at the zombie's obedient appearance, Xiao Qing's gloomy mood was a little better. She was on guard as she untied the zombie, but the zombie didn't attack her. It just obediently squatted in the corner. Xiao Qing found that the zombie's hands that were broken by her last night had recovered. This was a very strange zombie. As a reward for its obedience, Xiao Qing gave it a crystal stone. The zombie looked at Xiao Qing with its big black eyes. After a long while, it quietly reached out its hand, took the crystal stone from Xiao Qing's hand, and quickly ate it. It seemed that it could directly digest these crystals. After eating the crystal stone given by Xiao Qing, the zombie became closer to Xiao Qing. Silly, I'll call you Air Dai from now on. Saying this, Xiao Qing laughed first. The zombie named Air Dai was keenly aware that this might be a very unpleasant name, but he didn't protest, and didn't dare to protest. He looked at Xiao Qing very honestly, which made people feel that he was a little silly. Looking at Air Dai's dusty cheeks and dirty clothes, Xiao Qing felt that she needed to help Air Dai clean up. She found a big tank from the store, and after filling it with water, Xiao Qing took off Air Dai's clothes. Air Dai stood there obediently, letting Xiao Qing take off his clothes. Xiao Qing's eyes moved down, sweeping over Air Dai's blue and white body, and stopped at a certain place. Hey, it's not rotten. Air Dai, who didn't have any sense of shame, strangely had the impulse to retreat, but he was directly stuffed into the tank by Xiao Qing. Before she stuffed him in, Xiao Qing flicked a soft part of his body, and chuckled, "All the hair is gone." Looking at the confused Air Dai, Xiao Qing was a little embarrassed, and immediately prepared to bathe Air Dai. Zombies didn't like water, so he kept struggling in the water, but he was still washed clean by Xiao Qing. After the bath, he changed into a clean set of clothes. If you didn't look carefully, you wouldn't notice that Dai was a zombie. Touching the hair on Dai's head, Xiao Qing was very satisfied. At the beginning, she did have a trace of sympathy, but now she felt that it was quite good to have a zombie as a companion. At least zombies wouldn't stab her in the back. In this respect, those human beings were not as good as zombies. Looking at the adult and the child sitting on the ground, looking at her with the same confused eyes, Xiao Qing's heart softened. Probably after becoming a mother, women would have this kind of maternal love. This slowly overflowing softness temporarily covered the haze in Xiao Qing's heart, and made her clearly feel that besides revenge, she had other reasons to live. Chapter 7. Xiao Qing let out a sigh of relief after digging out the crystals. She and Dai cooperated well. Dai almost swept through the entire city with her. In the corner of Xiao Qing's space, there was a small pile of crystals. These were the fruits of their labor for the past 2 days. These crystals, excluding the ones given to Dai, were enough for Little Bun to eat for a month or 2. Xiao Qing prepared to leave. Before leaving, she took Dai to the largest shopping mall in the city. She planned to clean up the place for Dai to live in the future. After all, Xiao Qing couldn't always bring a zombie with her. Even if Dai was much smarter than normal zombies, there was still a lot of things to do. There were a lot of people in the mall, and a lot of people had turned into zombies. Xiao Qing entered the first floor and saw zombies wandering around, twice as many as on the street. Once they entered the mall, the human and the zombie began to move quickly. Although they had only known each other for a week, Xiao Qing and Dai had developed a great tacit understanding. Dai quickly seduced a zombie that looked more agile than normal wandering zombies. It slowly moved towards the door. Xiao Qing quietly attacked and cooperated with Dai to kill the zombie. Every time they killed a few zombies, Dai would happily take out the crystals from the zombie's skull and give them to Xiao Qing as if they were treasures. Xiao Qing disliked Dai and washed the crystals off his hands that were covered in brain matter. Only after that would she put the crystals into her space. Xiao Qing was worried that it would be inconvenient to leave Little Bun in the car, so she made a basket and carried Little Bun on her back. Occasionally, she would give Little Bun a crystal as a snack. Just as they were about to clean up the first floor, there was a sudden roar of a car outside the mall. Xiao Qing and Dai tacitly hid. Then, 3 men and a woman walked in from the outside. The woman kept throwing fireballs, burning the zombies nearby to death. Why are there so few zombies? I thought there would be a lot of zombies in the mall. The woman sighed and said. The tall man behind her said, Look at the ground, there are zombie corpses everywhere. I'm afraid that someone has come in before us. Then, are there still supplies inside? One of the fat men asked anxiously. If there isn't, then wouldn't we have come here for nothing? Let's go up and take a look. Don't be careless. Be careful, the last man who was relatively silent said. The group of 4 walked up cautiously. Fatty said as he walked, It's best if there are supplies. We're almost out of food. If we can't find any more, we'll have to rob. Sk, if we can get a fat sheep like last time, it'll be enough for us to eat for a week. The woman sneered, If you guys don't go whoring or gambling, how can we lose all our supplies so quickly? All right, stop arguing. The tall man frowned and said coldly, Pay attention to the surroundings. Fatty, open your perception. Opening perception consumes a lot of my spiritual power. Fatty muttered and opened his perception. Once he opened his perception, he was stunned. There's someone in front. As soon as the fatty's voice fell, the 4 of them quickly became alert and prepared to attack. Xiao Qing was stunned for a moment, but she instantly understood. The fatty's ability was probably his perception, just like a scan. That was how he discovered her. Giving Dai a calm look, Xiao Qing stood up. Sorry, I didn't know who came in, so I didn't come out. She knew that now wasn't the time to pretend to be weak. After all, if she was a weak woman, she wouldn't appear in a mall full of zombies. As soon as the 4 people saw Xiao Qing, their eyes changed. Especially when they saw Little Bun sticking his head out from Xiao Qing's shoulder, they became more alert. A single woman with a child could survive in a city full of zombies until now, and still appear in a mall unscathed. This woman's strength was definitely not low. It could even be said that she was definitely stronger than all of them. After all, none of the 4 people dared to say that they could go deep into such a city alone. As soon as they saw that Xiao Qing was a woman, the woman in the group of 4 stood up. "Hello, we're from S-City's Survivor Base. Did you kill the zombies here?" This base should be the same as the one the men had mentioned before. Xiao Qing thought quickly, but she didn't show it on her face. She smiled and said, "Hello, I don't know who killed these zombies. When I came in, they were already like this." The 4 people looked at each other. They probably didn't believe Xiao Qing's words. The woman smiled and continued, "I'm a level 1 fire paranormal. These are my companions. They are level 1 perception paranormal, level 1 strength paranormal, and level 1 wind paranormal." "Are paranormals categorized?" Xiao Qing blinked and asked curiously. The woman hesitated and said, "You haven't left the city since the apocalypse, right?" Xiao Qing nodded. Then the woman began to explain to her. After the apocalypse, some people turned into zombies, some people evolved with paranormal abilities, and some people were still ordinary people. There were many kinds of paranormal abilities, but there were 2 kinds that were more common. One was the nature paranormal, which was metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, ice, and so on. The other was the physical paranormal, which included the 5 senses paranormal with better hearing and eyesight, the strength and speed paranormal with improved jumping ability, skin defense, and strength, as well as the spirit paranormal, which was the evolution of the brain. As for the other kinds of paranormal abilities, they were all classified as other kinds of paranormal abilities. Now, most of the paranormal had just awakened. Because the nature paranormal's level was low, their abilities were relatively weak and not very useful. As for the system paranormal, their abilities were more practical, especially the strength paranormal, which was more popular. However, anyone with some foresight could see that the nature paranormal would be the main force in the future. As people slowly advanced, the strength paranormal would be gradually surpassed by the nature paranormal with great potential. Xiao Qing thought for a moment and reached out her hand. "I should be a speed paranormal. As for my level, I don't know. I just awakened not long ago, so I should be at level 1. Nice to meet you." The woman and her teammates exchanged glances and then warmly shook hands with Xiao Qing. She smiled and said, "We are also very happy to meet you." Chapter 8. Both sides knew what was going on, and neither side trusted the other. The woman's group wanted to dig out the secret of how Xiao Qing could survive alone in the city, and Xiao Qing was interested in their strange energy crystal. So although they were walking up peacefully, they were actually very vigilant, especially Xiao Qing. She originally thought that if these people didn't make the first move, she would be willing to explore the building peacefully with them. After all, she didn't know how strong these 4 people were, and she didn't dare to say that she could take them down. However, things often went against people's wishes. When the group just reached the 2nd floor, the fat man suddenly turned back and said, "No, there's someone else." As his voice fell, the silent man with the wind element had already sent a wind blade in the direction of the fat man's line of sight. Dai, who was hiding in a dark corner, roared angrily and quickly dodged the wind blade, but because of this, his body was exposed. Green-white skin, dark red eyes, and a body that was stiffer than a normal human's, all of which indicated that he wasn't a human. Even if he was dressed decently, it couldn't change the fact that he was a zombie. The 4 people's faces changed in an instant. They had never seen a zombie that was so fast that it looked like a living person. The tall man's brain worked the fastest. When everyone's eyes were attracted by Dai, he screamed, "Watch out behind!" However, this reminder was a little too late, because when they turned back, they saw the fat man with his eyes wide open. He softly knelt on the ground, and finally fell down with a bang. Blood mixed with brain matter flowed out of the bloody hole in the back of his head. Xiao Qing shook the blood on her fingernails, and very unsatisfied put away a white crystal. The woman's legs immediately went soft. She's not a human either. Did humans have long black and gray nails that could be freely extended and as hard as a sharp blade? Looking carefully, Xiao Qing's face was frighteningly pale, and there was a faint red in the bottom of her eyes. Even Little Bun, who was peeking out from her shoulder, became scary, especially when Little Bun looked at them with his sinister eyes. This time, they had indeed discovered the secret of Xiao Qing's survival in the city. It turned out that this beautiful woman in front of them was not human at all. "I didn't want to kill you." Xiao Qing curled her lips and her eyes turned sharp. Die." The restless Dai received the order and immediately rushed towards the remaining 3 people. The weakest, Fatty, was already dead. The remaining 3 were not weak at all. She had seen what she shouldn't have seen. Xiao Qing would never let them leave alive. The moment Dai made his move, she also made her move. After being resurrected, Xiao Qing's speed, strength, and defense had greatly increased. After absorbing so many crystals, her growth in all aspects was even more significant. Not to mention, she was good at using short weapons. Now that her fingernails were sharp and tough, her fighting strength had increased by a lot. It was the early days of the apocalypse, and these ability users were still exploring. They couldn't use their abilities skillfully, and their fighting strength was greatly reduced. After a short while, they were covered in wounds, but they couldn't hurt Dai and Xiao Qing at all. "Go to hell." The woman was the first to collapse. She suddenly rushed towards Xiao Qing without dodging. She gathered a ball of fire in her palm, and the ball of fire was getting bigger and bigger. Her forehead began to sweat. Xiao Qing could see that she had used all her ability to gather the ball of fire. She didn't even use a bit of her ability to control the ball of fire. This kind of fireball would explode if she wasn't careful. It seemed that the woman was ready to die together with her. Just as Xiao Qing was about to retreat, the tall man took the opportunity to release a wind ring to bind her ankles, making it impossible for her to escape. Dai was also entangled by the silent man. Xiao Qing's eyes were red. She stared at the woman and quickly threw Little Bun away. As soon as the woman came close, she would crush her throat. Even if they died together, the woman would die first. However, Xiao Qing really didn't want to die. After all, she still needed to raise Little Bun. If she died, Little Bun was a child. His identity was so sensitive, and he had to eat zombie crystals and ability users' energy. How could he survive in the apocalypse? However, the scene in front of her didn't allow her to take any chances. The woman quickly approached, and Xiao Qing's eyes were getting redder. She stared at the woman and felt a little irritated. If she had a long-range attack, she wouldn't be at such a disadvantage. Even if she had the ability to strengthen her body, she might still be able to survive. However, there were no ifs in this world. She could only endure it or hope that the fireball didn't explode after the woman died. Although the latter was almost impossible. The moment the woman came in front of Xiao Qing had already reached out her hand and crushed her throat. However, the woman's body had already fallen into Xiao Qing's arms. With a loud bang, the fireball rose and swallowed the 2 figures. Dai roared crazily and threw the silent man to the wall. He rushed towards the fireball crazily. His usually calm face had a ferocious expression. Chapter 9. However, Dai didn't manage to jump into the fire, because the green flames rose to the sky and blocked it. The fire gradually went out, revealing a large green cocoon inside. The cocoon looked like a cage made of willow branches. It kept moving rhythmically and was unharmed by the fire. When the fire was completely extinguished, the plants that made up the cocoon slowly shrank, revealing Xiao Qing. Her face was paler than before, but she didn't look any different. Dai was stunned, and so were the other 2 superpowered men. The first one to react was the tall and thin man with the wind superpower. He didn't hesitate to leave his partner and run away. Xiao Qing looked at him reflexively. Green vines suddenly appeared under the man's feet and quickly climbed up his thighs, binding him tightly. These vines had small sharp thorns. Once they pierced the skin, they would quickly release an anesthetic liquid. The man's pupils dilated in an instant, and his body went limp. He forced himself to stay strong and release his superpower. However, before the small wind blades could fall on the vines, the sharp nails had penetrated the back of his head. There was a part of the back of a person's head that wasn't covered by the skull. When the nails pierced through, it was the soft brain. By the time Xiao Qing pulled out her fingernails, there was already a blue spirit stone between her two fingernails. The last man was a strength superpower. His face was a little pale, probably because he knew that if the three of them couldn't take down Xiao Qing and Dai, he would definitely die alone. At this moment, Xiao Qing's eyes were red. She lowered her head slightly and looked at the silent man with cold eyes. His eyes quickly dimmed, because Dai had broken his spine from behind. Xiao Qing was very satisfied with the 4 energy crystals. Moreover, she had suddenly awakened a superpower, which was what made her excited. Now, even if she blended into the crowd, she could pretend to be a wood-type ability user. Her safety was greatly improved. After retrieving the crystal, Xiao Qing carried little Baozi on her back again. Her heart ached as she checked little Baozi's body. Fortunately, little Baozi was not an ordinary child. Otherwise, little Baozi would have been in pain when she threw him out. After dealing with the scene, Xiao Qing took Dai upstairs. Since he almost lost his life, Dai didn't want to be too far away from Xiao Qing. Even when they were cleaning, Dai would try to stay close to Xiao Qing. They spent the whole day cleaning up the mall, and very soon, the interior of the mall was cleaned up. After throwing all the corpses out and cleaning the place, Xiao Qing sat on the floor and gestured for Dai to sit down as well. Come. Dai sat beside Xiao Qing obediently. He stared at Xiao Qing with his clean and clear eyes, like a husky. Xiao Qing took out a lot of crystals from the space, and then took out a small red bag. There was no pattern on it. It was simply made of 2 pieces of cloth. Xiao Qing put the crystals into the bag, and then hung the bag around Dai's neck. Dai looked very happy. He kept touching the bag with his hands, but he was afraid that his long nails would scratch the bag. His careful look was somewhat cute. Dai, I have to go. In the future, you will live here alone. Well, you will be a zombie. Don't provoke too many zombies. They are so fierce. Can you beat them in a group fight? Live well. Maybe we can meet again in the future. Xiao Qing touched Dai's head, and then laughed at herself. She said so much to a zombie. How could he understand? Dai suddenly opened his eyes wide and shouted at Xiao Qing. He also pulled the red bag and stuffed it into Xiao Qing's hand. His expression was very sad. Xiao Qing couldn't bear to see him like this. After living together for a few days, Xiao Qing could understand Dai's meaning. He was clearly saying that he didn't want any of the crystals, as long as Xiao Qing didn't leave. But how could Xiao Qing not leave? No matter what her body became, her spirit was always a human. Living in a place without people for a long time, even the most tenacious person would go crazy. Not to mention she wanted revenge. I'm leaving. Take care. Once again, she hung the red bag around Dai's neck. Xiao Qing walked down. She walked forward. Dai was like a child who did something wrong and wanted to follow behind her. When Xiao Qing walked, Dai followed. When Xiao Qing stopped, Dai also stopped. As long as Xiao Qing turned around, she could see Dai standing alone not far behind her. He looked like he wanted to follow but didn't dare to. She was a bit soft-hearted. She had to bite the bullet and get on the car. When she ran out of the city gate, Xiao Qing couldn't help but look back. She saw Dai standing at the gate. His thin figure was even a bit thin. His roar had an indescribable sadness, and it echoed in Xiao Qing's ears. Resisting the urge to look back, Xiao Qing stepped on the brakes and quickly drove forward. Dai was left standing there, touching the heavy red bag on his chest. His entire body became gloomy. His voice sounded like he was sobbing. After a long time, Dai quietly stepped out. He looked back at the city behind him, and then walked forward without looking back. Chapter 10. The person who led the way told Xiao Qing something like how she could get a better place to live after leveling up her ability, and so on before leaving. Xiao Qing began to look around the place she would be living in for the time being. The room was not big, so she soon finished looking around. Then, she put the little bun on the bed and let him play by himself. The little bun poured out a pile of crystals and began to count them. Xiao Qing sewed a small pouch for him and stuffed some crystals into it as snacks. Xiao Qing began to decorate the house simply, when a handsome man came over. He was wearing a pair of glasses and looked quite elegant. Looking at Xiao Qing's puzzled eyes, he hurriedly introduced himself. "I live next door to you. I heard that a new person moved in, so I came over to take a look. We'll be neighbors from now on. If you need any help, just let me know." Xiao Qing and he got to know each other. After a round of greetings, she watched him leave. During the whole time, the man named Li Jing was peeking at Xiao Qing's breasts and buttocks. It was obvious that he was not a decent man. However, through Li Jing, Xiao Qing also learned some things. For example, as a superpowered person, they couldn't be a freeloader. They had to join the search teams regularly, and half of the resources they found had to be handed over to the base. For example, if there was any trivial matter, they could hire ordinary people to do it. For a little bit of food, they could hire ordinary people for a day's work. Of course, some beautiful girls were always hired first. The reason was self-evident. Ordinary people had to work in exchange for food, but they usually only got a little food after working for a day, so they had to come out to earn extra money. After learning some details, Xiao Qing lived in the base. In order to not be conspicuous, she signed up for a search team, the kind that went out to search once a week. There were two kinds of search teams. One was composed of ordinary people. They searched around the base and got fewer resources, so it was more dangerous. The other type was a team of paranormals. Because they often went to places where no one had been before, they could get more resources. Xiao Qing calculated that she still needed a water tank, a bathtub, and a sofa. She planned to go to the self-organized market in the base to have a look. The market was located in an area where ordinary people lived. There were all kinds of strange things to buy. Xiao Qing carried Little Bun on her back. Along the way, she saw people selling gold jewelry and luxury goods. There were also people selling strange trinkets and even pornographic films. However, very few people went to buy them. After all, at the end of the world, those luxuries were completely useless. Take gold jewelry for example, it was a bit of a burden when wearing it in battle. Other than being flashy, it had no other use. One biscuit could be exchanged for several. Soon, Xiao Qing found a place that sold old furniture. Although it was called old furniture, in fact, even the worst furniture was 90% new. It was placed there and no one cared about it. Xiao Qing chose a big bathtub, a sofa, and a pack of compressed biscuits. The seller was so grateful that he wanted to help her carry it back. Xiao Qing looked at the seller's thin arms and legs and decisively gave up. Anyway, the labor market was just a little further ahead. She could totally hire a strong man to transport the things back. Anyway, she didn't lack food. There were a lot of people in the labor market. There were also coquettish women with heavy makeup, waiting to sell their bodies in exchange for food. Xiao Qing saw the man squatting in the corner at a glance. It was probably because his muscles were very beautiful. They weren't bulging exaggeratedly, but they were streamlined and even the curve of his muscles looked very nice. The only regrettable thing was that his muscles were full of big and small scars, old and new, overlapping each other. His hair was disheveled, and he sat in the corner shirtless. He didn't come up to sell himself like the others, but Xiao Qing always felt that he was like a lazy leopard. Xiao Qing's eyes swept over him. His muscles quickly tensed and he entered a state of alert. This made Xiao Qing a little curious. What did he do in the past? So Xiao Qing decisively hired him. "Help me carry some things. I'll give you 2 compressed biscuits." The man raised his head slightly. His facial features were very outstanding. His eyebrows were handsome, his nose was high, and his eyes were very lively. Okay. The man's voice was a little low and hoarse. He got up from the ground, and his height was completely exposed in front of Shao Qing. He was about 1.8 meters tall. The surrounding people shushed him and dispersed. The remaining man carried the sofa, the bathtub, and followed Shao Qing back. There were more scars on his back than on his front. They were overlapping, and some of them were obviously new. Shao Qing had no intention to explore at all. She led him back. Chapter 11. No wonder little Baozi vomited so badly after drinking the milk powder. Shao Qing ate 2 mouthfuls and didn't want to torture her stomach anymore. Seeing this, Li Jing hurriedly asked, "Is it because my cooking is too disgusting?" "No, my stomach hasn't been feeling well recently." Shao Qing couldn't help but answer perfunctorily. Li Jing narrowed his eyes and chuckled. "Even if your stomach isn't feeling well, you have to eat something. If you don't eat, how can your body stand it?" "No." Shao Qing just wanted to go out and vomit all the food in her stomach, so she said, "I'm really sorry to disturb you today. It's not that your cooking isn't good, but I really can't eat anymore. Another day, I'll treat you to my cooking." Seeing that Shao Qing was about to leave, Li Jing hurriedly said, "If you don't want to eat, at least eat some fruit. I have some fresh apples here. Wait, I'll get them for you." Before Shao Qing could refuse, he went into the back room to get them. Shao Qing had to sit down again. Her stomach was churning, and she really wanted to go out and vomit. Li Jing took out 2 big red apples and a string of green grapes. He handed an apple to Shao Qing and said, "Give the grapes to the baby." Shao Qing wanted to refuse, but her stomach was really uncomfortable, so she accepted. "I'm really not feeling well. I'll treat you to something another day." Li Jing's eyes flashed with joy. He thought that the medicine he gave Shao Qing worked, so he tried to persuade Shao Qing to stay. Shao Qing was about to vomit all over his face. She couldn't keep her smile. She hurriedly said, "I'll go first." Then she went out of the door regardless of Li Jing's obstruction. As soon as she left, Shao Qing felt that Li Jing was following her. She sped up without saying a word. Using the anti-tracking skills she had practiced for so many years, she easily got rid of Li Jing. After getting rid of Li Jing, Shao Qing found a corner to vomit. She vomited as much as she ate. After vomiting, Shao Qing began to worry about the little bun in the bed. She wiped her mouth, rinsed her mouth with mineral water, and prepared to leave. He had only taken 2 steps when he saw a familiar figure walk out of the tent. His back was still bare, revealing his strong and muscular waist. He obviously also noticed Shao Qing, and his body stiffened. Shao Qing then saw that there were many more wounds on his body. Most of them were bruises. Shao Qing wanted to leave, but she stopped when her eyes met with the man's deep eyes. The man seemed to be hesitating. After a while, he came over and asked in a low voice, "Master, do you need any more labor?" Shao Qing frowned slightly. Her gaze fell on the man's scarred chest. She sneered, "Asking a woman if she needs labor in the middle of the night? Aren't you afraid that I'll let my imagination run wild and really ask you to labor?" The man was obviously at a loss. He was stunned for a moment, and his cheeks were covered by the moonlight. His lips squirmed, and he stuttered, I didn't mean that. I know. I'm just kidding." Shao Qing spurned her own bad taste and patted the man's shoulder. "Can you tell me what you need?" "Medicine. Anti-inflammatory." The man's eyes lit up, and then quickly dimmed. Medicine was even scarcer after the apocalypse. Most of the medicine was controlled by the base and provided to the injured paranormals. The rest could be exchanged with points, but the points needed to be exchanged with materials, and the amount of points needed to exchange for medicine was very high. The man didn't have any abilities, so he could only rely on his physical strength. He also joined a search team made up of ordinary people, but the amount he got was only enough to eat, and he couldn't take out any extra materials to exchange for points. He lived frugally, and the points he collected were not even enough to exchange for the most common medicine. Therefore, after the apocalypse, ordinary people really couldn't afford to get sick. I have some. Xiao Qing had collected a lot of medicine, but she later found that she and Little Bun didn't have the physique to get sick, so the medicine was useless. Fortunately, she didn't have time to throw it away. Can you give me some? I can help you. As he spoke, the man's face turned red. He naturally knew that he was taking advantage of Xiao Qing. Yes, but I have a question to ask you. Xiao Qing nodded and asked, What did you do before? The man said, I used to be a soldier, but later I retired due to injury. Xiao Qing's impression of the man immediately rose a lot, probably because she was also a retired soldier, so she always had some inexplicable good feelings for soldiers. Moreover, the man retired due to injury, and his situation was the same as hers. How much do you need? Xiao Qing asked. I don't know. The man frowned and opened the tent curtain behind him, and saw a woman lying on a tattered quilt. The woman was in her 50s or 60s, and there was a deep wound on her bare thigh, which seemed to be torn open. Because it wasn't treated in time, the wound was full of pus and blood, causing a strange smell in the air. The man was a little embarrassed and said, My mother's wound has been infected for a long time, and the smell is not good, please don't mind. It's nothing. Xiao Qing didn't want to reveal her space, so she said, Come to my place tomorrow, I don't have any medicine with me. Okay. The man was very ashamed and said, But I have nothing to give you. Xiao Qing's eyes swept over the man's strong chest, and she touched his chest with some teasing and said with a smile, It's okay, you are mine in the future. The honest man shrank back, and his face was so red that it was about to drip blood. Obviously, he had never been teased like this, and his whole person seemed to be a lot more dull. Until Xiao Qing's voice floated into his ears, What's your name? Yan Han Qing, he said reflexively. My name is Xiao Qing, remember to come to me tomorrow. Seeing that Yan Han Qing was still in a daze, Xiao Qing couldn't help but smile, and then she turned and left. Yan Han Qing waited until Xiao Qing was far away before he reacted, and his forehead was full of sweat. Just what did she say? Chapter 12. Xiao Qing went home, but she didn't know that Li Jing was stunned at the moment. He gave Xiao Qing a strong knockout drug, the kind that could knock out a cow, but Xiao Qing not only didn't faint in his house, but also walked faster than anyone else and got rid of him. What knockout drug? Bad review. Li Jing, who felt that he might have been taken advantage of by others, was very unhappy. He didn't know that Xiao Qing couldn't digest the food at all, let alone the knockout drug in the food. Xiao Qing, who didn't know anything, went home and slept soundly with her son in her arms. The next morning, Xiao Qing brushed Little Bun's teeth in a daze. When she opened the door, she saw Yan Han Qing squatting at the door, with dew on his crew-cut hair. He must have come early to wait for Xiao Qing, but he didn't want to disturb her. Come in. Xiao Qing gently kicked his leg. Yan Han Qing obediently entered the door and stood there, a little helpless. Xiao Qing pulled out a chair and said, Let's eat together. Anyway, the baby and I can't finish it. Yan Han Qing quickly waved his hand. Xiao Qing promised to give him the drug, which was already a big bargain for him. How could he have the nerve to eat Xiao Qing's food? Moreover, Xiao Qing was a single mother. Even if she had superpowers, food was not easy to get. He was a 7 feet tall man with hands and feet. How could he have the nerve to eat Xiao Qing's food? However, Xiao Qing had already pressed him directly on the table, set the plate, and put bread and eggs on it. Little Bun on the other side had moved his short legs and tried to climb on the bench, but his height was a problem. Xiao Qing picked up Little Bun and pushed the plate in front of Yan Han Qing. Eat. Yan Han Qing still wanted to decline, but Xiao Qing had already said, I'm going out to search for supplies, and I'll take you with me. If you don't eat, how will you have the strength? Yan Han Qing silently made a note in his mind, and then he picked up the bread with a fried egg and started to eat. After the apocalypse, food became more and more precious. The ordinary people in the base were given porridge, hard mixed grain pancakes, soft bread, and fried golden eggs. It was already a rare thing. Yan Hanqing was even a little reluctant to eat it. He wanted to bring it back to his mother. Shao Qing saw through his thoughts and said, "There's more in the pot. Bring some back for auntie later." Yan Hanqing's face turned red. After a while he said in a muffled voice, "I'll pay you back later." If he was asked to bring it back to eat, he would definitely not accept it. However, he still had an old and injured mother at home. "Okay." Shao Qing did not use a pretentious tone to say anything. She knew that not only would she not help Yan Hanqing, but she would also hurt his dignity. Probably because of the training in the army, Yan Hanqing did not say a word while eating. In the end, Yan Hanqing, who was full, and Shao Qing, who was not eating, looked at Little Bun clumsily using a table knife to cut the egg. Little Bun and Shao Qing were different. Shao Qing only wanted to vomit after eating normal food, but Little Bun could still eat some high-calorie food after absorbing some crystals. Therefore, Shao Qing often made something to nourish Little Bun. Perhaps subconsciously, she still hoped that Little Bun could be like a normal child. "Here's medicine that can last for about 2 weeks. Take it back first." Shao Qing took out the medicine bag that she had prepared beforehand and handed it to Yan Hanqing. "I'm going out in 2 days. Are you free? I can ask a friend to take care of my mother." Yan Hanqing nodded. "I'm fine." "That's good." Shao Qing stood up and packed the remaining fried egg in the pot. She also stuffed a few packs of ham sausages and bread into it and handed it to Yan Hanqing. "Don't forget. It should be the day after tomorrow at the latest." Yan Hanqing nodded. He was eager to go back and give his mother the medicine. Shao Qing did not ask him to stay. "Go quickly. I'm going to see auntie too." Yan Hanqing knew that Shao Qing was worried that someone would see the medicine in his arms and steal it. She specially escorted him. His heart felt warm. He could not help but think of Shao Qing's words that night. She said that he was her. Other things aside, just the things that he owed her were enough to repay with his life. Thinking that there were other ways to repay her, the honest Yan Hanqing could feel his face burning without touching it. Shao Qing carried the Little Bun on her back and walked with Yan Hanqing to where he lived. Yan Hanqing secretly glanced at Shao Qing. He could not help but think that Shao Qing was such a beautiful and capable girl. How could she fall for him? He must have heard wrongly. Even if she had a child, men who were willing to be with Shao Qing would definitely go for her. How could it be his turn? The more Yan Hanqing thought about it, the more he felt that he might have heard wrongly. Yan Hanqing started his military service at the age of 18. He had not been in a relationship until he retired due to injury at the age of 27. After all, there were almost no girls in the military, especially in the unit he was in. Because of some special circumstances, other than the military doctor, everyone was male. Therefore, it was Yan Hanqing's first time coming into contact with a girl as soft as Shao Qing. As he thought about it, his palms became wet with sweat. Chapter 13. The next day, Shao Qing packed her things and contacted a team of paranormals. On the surface, Shao Qing was a wood paranormal. Wood paranormals were more popular, even though she was only at level 1. Soon, Shao Qing found a team that was willing to accept her. Many search teams were made up of paranormals and ordinary people. After all, paranormals were rare. Those who could gather a team of paranormals were usually the top search teams in the base. Such teams generally didn't accept people. Shao Qing didn't find many people in the team. There were only 3 paranormals, a pair of brother and sister. The brother was a man of few words, but he was quite good-looking. He had deep facial features and delicate eyebrows. It was a pity that he had facial paralysis. The younger sister was quite lively. She was a little beauty with almond-shaped eyes and cherry lips. She wore a little halter top that revealed her navel and chattered very energetically. Thus, Xiao Qing quickly found out that the older brother's name was Gu Chuan and the younger sister's name was Gu Pan Pan. The other paranormal was called Tu. He was round and had an earth paranormal ability. In addition to the 3 paranormals, there was also a couple of ordinary people. Including Xiao Qing and the others, there were 7 people. Xiao Qing arrived at the agreed meeting place. The other people had also arrived. When the woman saw Xiao Qing, her face changed. She muttered, "You're going out to search for supplies with a child. It's not like you're on vacation. Do you want to die?" The man hurriedly pulled his wife's sleeve and smiled pleasingly. "Don't mind her, madam. My wife is quite straightforward." Xiao Qing shook her head and said, "I don't know many people in the base. The baby is still young. I don't feel safe to entrust him to others, so I brought him with me. Don't worry, my baby also has a paranormal ability. Although it's only his 5 senses, it's still useful. He won't drag you down." When they heard that the little bun had a paranormal ability, the couple's face changed. They didn't say anything else. Gu Pan Pan was more enthusiastic. She waved her hand and said, "Hurry up and get in the car. Let's go now. It'll take an hour to get there." Xiao Qing got into the car with Little Bun and Yan Hanqing. Yan Hanqing was carrying a bag, which contained the water and food that Xiao Qing had brought, as well as some tools that he had brought. The 7 of them split into 2 cars. Xiao Qing, Yan Hanqing, and the siblings were in one car, while the young couple and the fat man were in the other. Along the way, Gu Panpan's mouth never stopped talking. She talked about everything from before the apocalypse to the apocalypse, from food and clothing to entertainment, from gossip to rumors. In the end, Xiao Qing was completely stupefied. She finally understood why Gu Chuan always had a poker face. If she had such a younger sister, she would probably have a paralyzed face now. Moreover, it was possible that the person with facial paralysis was more powerful than Gu Chuan. When they finally arrived at their destination, Xiao Qing got out of the car as if she was escaping. Gu Pan Pan was still not satisfied. After she got out of the passenger seat, she looked at Xiao Qing with a happy expression. "I'll talk to you again when I have time." Xiao Qing was speechless. "I refuse." The 7 of them, including Little Bun, entered the destination together. Because of various reasons, even though they knew that there were many good things in big cities, they didn't dare to enter big cities to search for supplies. They could only go to smaller towns. Most of the houses in the towns were single-story houses. The density of people was low, so there were fewer zombies than in big cities. For a small search team like them, although there was less meat in the towns, it was much safer. As soon as they got out of the car, Xiao Qing noticed that the man beside her quickly became alert. This alertness didn't only affect his mind, but also his body. His muscles were in a state of alertness. As long as there was danger, he would be able to react immediately. Should it be said that he was indeed from the military? Xiao Qing glanced at Yan Hanqing from the corner of her eyes. She took the lead and walked forward. Yan Hanqing quickly followed. He stood behind Xiao Qing on the left. This position could prevent people from sneaking up on Xiao Qing. Secondly, if something unexpected happened, he could quickly block the disaster for Xiao Qing. Xiao Qing had taken on many bodyguard missions. She had protected many important people. Naturally, she understood the meaning of Yan Hanqing's actions better than anyone else. Xiao Qing couldn't help but smile. Even her footsteps became lighter. The second she died, her heart was filled with hatred. She hated the woman who killed her and her baby. She hated Lin Qifan who betrayed her. Because of this, she even thought that there were no good men in the world. All men were bad. However, at this second, Yan Hanqing made Xiao Qing feel that no matter what Yan Hanqing's thoughts were, whether it was to repay a debt of gratitude or to get used to it, at least he was a good man. Previously, she helped Yan Hanqing because of her colleagues. Now, she felt that her decision was right. "Don't get separated when we enter the town." Gu Chuan said the second sentence after he met Xiao Qing. Before that, he only said 2 words, "Hello." Even his self-introduction was done by Gu Pan Pan. "Once we get separated, it will be difficult to rescue if we are surrounded by zombies. So, try not to stray too far from the team. Gu Pan Pan added carefully. Then, they really stepped into the town. Normally, when a search team went out to search for supplies, they would also search for survivors. If they could protect themselves, they would bring the survivors back to the base. Survivors were the foundation of the base's strength. If a survivor wanted to live in the base for a long time, they would have to hand over half of their supplies. The base would give out 10% of this half to the people who found the survivor. Of course, people like Xiao Qing, who looked poor on the surface, might be too lazy to save people if they met someone who was in a bad mood. After they entered the town, they kept their vigilance and started searching. People in the countryside usually had some food in their homes. After the harvest every year, they would build a kind of pointed grain store to store food. Therefore, Xiao Qing and the others had to search from house to house and bring back all the food they found. Unfortunately, this kind of town was close to the base, so people had already been here. Most of the things on the surface had already been searched. The group searched for a long time. Except for zombies, they didn't find any grains of rice. However, they saw a lot of corpses. Many people in the family had one person turned into a zombie, and the whole family had been bitten to death and turned into zombies. There were also people whose whole family had turned into zombies, and only one person was alive. This kind of people was more miserable. They were all gnawed to bones. I remember that there is a granary in front of us. It is where the merchants in the village store their rice. Two pointed to the front and said, "Why don't we go and have a look?" Chapter 14. There were a lot of zombies around the granary, so there should still be some food left. After some discussion, they decided to go to the granary. Xiao Qing also successfully witnessed Gu Pan Pan and Gu Chuan's superpowers. Gu Pan Pan was a girl, but her superpower was actually strengthening. At the beginning of the battle, she turned into a King Kong Barbie, the kind that could tear apart zombies with her bare hands. On the other hand, Gu Chuan's ability was ice. His current ability wasn't very strong and was mainly used as a support. Every time, Gu Chuan would use his ability to freeze the zombies' feet, making them unable to move for a short period of time. Then, Gu Pan Pan would break the zombies' necks like Hercules or shatter their skulls. R2's special ability was mainly for defense. He brought the young couple along and used a machete to chop the zombies frozen by Gu Chuan and the zombies bound by Xiao Qing's special ability to death. Yan Hanqing silently followed Xiao Qing, holding a knife in his hand. Any zombie that tried to get close to Xiao Qing would be killed by him. The group quickly approached the granary. The granary looked very peaceful, with only a few zombies wandering outside. Let's finish it quickly. The longer we stay outside, the more zombies we will attract. Gu Pan Pan, who was talkative, seemed to be quite reliable during the battle. The few of them nodded and continued to work together to kill the zombies. In fact, the combat power of these zombies was not high because they moved slowly. In addition to being ugly and particularly tenacious, they would not die unless their heads were attacked. If they did not gather in a group, even an ordinary person could kill a few zombies. Of course, this was on the surface. In addition to the fact that she was no longer a human, Xiao Qing also knew Air Dai's strange zombie. It moved quickly, had a certain level of intelligence, had a very fast learning ability, and even had emotions. Was Air Dai the only zombie like that? Moreover, zombies were likely to evolve, just like human superpowers could evolve. Zombies were likely to evolve in a certain direction, such as speed, body toughness, strength, intelligence, and so on. Therefore, Xiao Qing didn't relax at all. On the other hand, the young couple relaxed a lot when they saw the zombies being chopped up like vegetables. There must be a lot of supplies inside. When they arrived at the door, the young couple could not wait to push the door open. R2 immediately said anxiously, "Be careful. What if there are zombies?" The woman rolled her eyes and muttered, "How can there be zombies when the door is closed? Even if there are zombies, I can deal with one or two of them. They are just afraid that we will steal the supplies." R2 was a little helpless, but he still put the earth armor on the young couple. It was formed by his superpower. Because he was only a level 1 superpower, his superpower only formed a thin layer of earth armor around the couple's vital parts. But if there were any accidents, it could still protect them. Just as they were worried about accidents, a black shadow fell from the sky when the woman pushed the door open. The woman screamed in fear, and her face turned pale. She was about to run away, but the black shadow threw her to the ground. The man saw it and went to pull her up, but when he reached out his hand, he saw that the black shadow was actually a zombie. His face turned green, and he ran away, not caring that his wife was still on the ground. Fortunately, Shao Qing reacted quickly. She reached out her hand, and green vines quickly tied up the zombie's hands and feet. Tu also used his superpower, and a section of the ground rose up to push the zombie away. The woman took the opportunity to stagger up and run to those people, but the zombie had already broken free from the bindings. The zombie was very fast. Not to mention ordinary zombies, even a level 1 superpower possessor might not be as fast as it. Shao Qing frowned slightly. Those vines were part of her superpower. She could feel that when the vines tied up the zombie, the sharp thorns pierced into it. It meant that the zombie's defense was average, but its speed was outstanding. Gu Chuan, restrict its movement. Shao Qing said quickly. Although Gu Chuan did not know what Shao Qing was going to do, he quickly released his superpower. The zombie was too fast, and he could not freeze its feet like before. He could only try his best to turn the water in the air into ice. The temperature in the area dropped quickly, and the zombie's body was soon covered in ice. Its speed gradually slowed down. Tu kept making pits where the zombie landed. Although it was not very effective, it still slowed the zombie down a little. Shao Qing saw the opportunity and released her vines to tie up the zombie. She wanted to fight with the zombie, but Gu Panpan and Yan Hanqing ran to the zombies left and right. Shao Qing's vines were the lowest level of mutated plants, and the anesthetic effect was not effective on the zombie. Soon, the zombie broke free from the vines. When it was about to run away, Gu Panpan, who looked like a King Kong Barbie, punched it in the face. Just like that, the zombie didn't die. It rolled on the ground and was about to run away. Yan Hanqing followed up and stabbed the zombie's head with his knife. The zombie's body bounced on the ground for a moment before it stopped moving. Shao Qing breathed a sigh of relief and narrowed her eyes. She began to extract the crystal from the zombie's body. This kind of mutated zombie must contain more energy than ordinary zombies. This zombie is strange. Let me take a look first. Shao Qing walked over and pretended to check the zombie's body. The young couple could not help but turn their heads away, unwilling to see the horrible zombie. Gu Panpan and Tu checked the couple. After all, they were ordinary people. If they were scratched or bitten, they would be infected. Shao Qing squinted her eyes and found that Gu Chuan and Yan Hanqing were not paying attention to her. She quickly inserted her nails into the zombie's head and skillfully found the crystal. She did not look at its size and put it into the space. Chapter 15. Why are you sweating so much? Are you scared? Gu Panpan gave the woman a simple examination, but didn't find any wounds. The woman wiped her sweat with a pale face and said, "Of course I was scared. That zombie suddenly jumped over and I almost became food in its stomach." "It's good that you're not hurt." Gu Panpan patted the woman's shoulder. The woman just smiled, but her face was getting paler. "Let's go." "Why are you standing there?" Her husband came over and patted the woman. The woman was scared and quickly said, "Let's go." "Scared out of your wits?" The man smiled and pulled the woman to follow. This time, it was Tu who opened the way. He had the earth power and high defense, so he was the most suitable to open the way. This time, everyone walked in carefully. They didn't find any zombies, but there was a pile of bones on the ground. It looked like the person had been dead for a long time. So much food. Gu Panpan stared blankly at the granary. She didn't think that there would be so much food left in the granary. It was probably because of the mutated zombie that the granary hadn't been emptied. Several other people also went to the surrounding granaries to check. Sure enough, there wasn't even a grain of rice left. The pile of bones on the ground must have been left behind by the previous search team members. They must have ransacked the surrounding granaries, and then the people they sent here were killed by the mutated zombie. They harvested so much that they didn't care about this little bit of food. They were worried that there would be a lot of mutated zombies in the granary, so they left. Now it's our lucky day, Gu Pan Pan said excitedly. Even R2 chimed in. I think so too. We are so lucky. Even if we hand over half of the food, we can still get a lot. Go get the car. Otherwise, how are we going to transport the food? Xiao Qing was relatively calm. After all, they didn't need much food. I'll go get it. Gu Chuan volunteered. Yan Honqing quickly followed. The others guarded the door and rested for a while in the granary. The young couple even took out something to cook jerky. The dried meat was boiled into a pot of soup. Along with the dried food, it could replenish one's strength. After Gu Chuan and Yan Honqing drove the 2 cars over, the group of people began to eat. Actually, Xiao Qing didn't need to eat, but she couldn't appear too abnormal. So, she ate a piece of dry food and fed little Bun some meat soup. In the name of convenience, she found a place to vomit. After solving the problem of food and clothing, the group of people moved the food into the car. Everyone was in high spirits. According to the distribution method agreed at the beginning, the 3 paranormals would each get 20%, and the young couple would each get 10%. The new members, Yan Honqing and Xiao Qing, took 20% of the total because they were new members. Moreover, one of them was an ordinary person, and the other was only a level 1 female with elemental paranormal. To put it bluntly, Gu Chuan and the others didn't know Xiao Qing and Little Bun's combat power. So, they distributed the shares in this way. Gu Chuan and Gu Pan Pan looked at each other. Gu Pan Pan stood up and said, although Sister Qing is a new member, everyone has seen her performance along the way. I think that 20% is too little. My brother and I discussed it and decided to give them another 10%. Before Gu Pan Pan could finish speaking, the man in the couple couldn't help but raise his voice. Wait a minute, I don't mind if you give them a bit more, but where do you get the extra money from? Gu Pan Pan couldn't help but frown. The nominal leader of this team was Gu Chuan, but ignoring this point, Gu Chuan and Little Bun were ranked the highest in the team according to combat power and contribution. The man's words were simply not giving them any face. The 10% for Sister Qing and the others, and the 40% for me and my brother. We will take 30%, and Sister Qing will take 30%. Don't worry, we won't touch your 20%, Gu Pan Pan said expressionlessly. Since she said so, the young couple stopped arguing. R2, on the other hand, was embarrassed. He quickly said, how about this, I will take 5%, you take 5%, and we'll take 10% for Xiao Qing and the others. No need, we are new members. 20% is already a lot. Xiao Qing didn't care about the food. What she cared about was the crystals. Okay, we'll split it when we get back, Gu Chuan said concisely. Let's go back first. The few of them didn't refuse anymore. They packed their things and went back. Ordinary search teams generally didn't spend the night outside, because zombies were the world at night. There were too many unpredictable dangers. Xiao Qing and the others had a good harvest this time, so they didn't need to continue searching. Therefore, the group of people simply searched the surroundings and set foot on the road back. The car full of food slowed down a little. From time to time, a few people had to get out of the car to clear the zombies on the road. Unexpectedly, they didn't reach the base before dark. There are houses in front of us. Let's clear one out and stay for the night. We'll leave tomorrow morning, R2 suggested. It was too dangerous to travel at night. Zombies are the most active at night. I also think we should stay for the night, Gu Pan Pan also said. No one had any objections. R2 first found a house with an intact door. Most of the houses in the countryside were wooden and iron doors. R2 saw a closed iron door. It seemed to be safe, so he went forward to open it. before he could open the door opened by itself. A skinny person poked his head out from the crack. His eyes were green, probably because he was hungry. "Who are you?" Chapter 16. Atu was shocked. He took a step back and subconsciously released his superpower. When he saw that it was a person and not something else, he let out a sigh of relief. "We are the search team from the S-City Survivor Base. We are passing by. Can we stay here for the night?" The man looked at Atu up and down with a strange look, then grinned. Okay. But what is a survivor base?" Atu looked around and said, "Can we go in first, and then I will explain to you?" "Come in." The man stepped back and let Xiao Qing and the others in. Xiao Qing frowned. She always felt that the man in front of her looked at people strangely, but she couldn't tell why. After entering, Xiao Qing and the others found that it was a sizable courtyard. There was a skinny woman holding a child in the yard, looking at the door with dull eyes. She only wore a loose coat, and most of her breasts were exposed to the air. From her neck to her exposed chest, there were bruises all over. When Xiao Qing and the others came to her side, the woman held the child in her arms in panic and murmured, "Don't eat my child, don't eat my child." Xiao Qing found that the child in her arms was not a child at all, but a dirty quilt with a small pillow wrapped in it. Xiao Qing's eyes quickly became cold, but she didn't say anything. The man who led the way hurriedly said, "She is a lunatic. The child was eaten by the man who turned her into a zombie. We took her in because she was pitiful." "I think it's because she's pretty," the man in the couple muttered. Then, he was slapped by his wife. After entering the house, the man who led the way shouted, "Boss, people from the survivor base are here." As his voice fell, several cold eyes fell on Xiao Qing and the others. There were quite a few people in the room. Most of them were very skinny and wore ragged clothes. However, the boss that the man spoke of was dressed in clean and tidy clothes. He looked like a decent human being. Survivor base? The boss walked over. He looked decent, but he had a pair of triangular eyes. When he smiled, his eyes squinted. No matter how you looked at him, he looked sinister. After coming over, he smoked several cigarettes and handed one to Atu, one to Gu Chuan, one to the man in the couple, and one to Yan Honqing. Gu Chuan and Yan Honqing didn't take it, but Atu and the man took it. Atu smiled and took it. "Since the apocalypse, I don't know how long it has been since I last smoked." Atu was telling the truth. In the apocalypse, people couldn't even eat, let alone smoke. The boss took a lighter and lit it for Atu. Then he shook the cigarette box and smiled. "Beautiful ladies, do you want one too?" Gu Pan Pan and the woman quickly shook their heads and waved their hands to show that they didn't smoke. The boss didn't force them. He smiled and said, "I also heard that there is a well-built survivor base in front of us. I always wanted to take my brothers there, but there are too many of us. We don't know how many of our brothers will die on the way there, so we didn't dare to move. Now that I met you, you must be capable. Can you escort us to the base?" The man in the couple patted his chest and said, "No problem." Not to mention Gu Chuan, even Gu Pan Pan frowned at his rash answer. She complained that he spoke too quickly. "In that case, that's the best. Please come in and have a good rest. We will leave tomorrow." The boss asked the man who led them to the room to rest. When the man left, Gu Pan Pan said, "Why did you agree so quickly? Anyway, it's good for us to take the survivors back." The man said naturally, "It's not troublesome to take them back." "It's troublesome," Gu Chuan said coldly. "What do you mean?" The man was stunned. Gu Chuan didn't want to talk to him. He went straight to the corner and sat down. Xiao Qing also found a place to sit with Yan Honqing. The man was a little embarrassed, but he didn't say anything. Soon, it was evening. Someone knocked on the door and invited Xiao Qing and the others to come over for dinner. The few of them went out. Xiao Qing took the little bun out of the basket and held him in her arms. She then took the milk bottle out of her bag. It wasn't milk powder in the bottle. It was chicken soup that she had boiled before she came. She had removed the layer of oil on top. Little Bao didn't even need to heat it up. He wasn't an ordinary person, so he wasn't afraid of getting cold. Little Bao didn't want to let go of the bottle. Xiao Qing sat down at the table. There were two people sitting at the table. One was the boss, and the other was a young man who looked like a gangster. The others were sitting in the corner eating dry food. "There's meat." The young couple's eyes were filled with excitement. After all, after the apocalypse, they rarely had the chance to eat meat. There was not only meat on the table, but also vegetables. There were 4 dishes and a soup. Although this configuration was nothing in the past, in the post-apocalyptic world, it was already a very luxurious meal. The boss made an inviting gesture and said, "Everyone came from afar. You're all guests. Please sit down." Gu Chuan, his sister, and Xiao Qing looked at each other. They saw the temperature in each other's eyes gradually drop. Only the young couple and Ah Tu were still very happy. "Let's eat. Don't be shy." The boss smiled and put a piece of meat in Xiao Qing's bowl. Chapter 17. It smells good. I haven't eaten meat for a long time. The couple quickly put a few pieces of meat into their bowls. After all, meat was one of the rarest foods in the apocalypse. Xiao Qing didn't eat. She picked up a mushroom with her chopsticks and ate it. When the boss asked, she just smiled and said, "I'm on a diet." The guests and the host enjoyed the meal. After the meal, everyone went to rest. They were ready to leave this damned place. Xiao Qing strolled into the courtyard, followed by the silent Yan Hanqing. There was no one in the courtyard, only a small oil lamp. She didn't know where it came from, but the light from the oil lamp shone through the window, making it look gloomy. "Aren't you going to ask me why I stopped you from eating meat?" Xiao Qing lowered her voice. Yan Hanqing shook his head. "I can see." "That's good." Xiao Qing held Little Bun's hand and made him stumble forward step by step. She deliberately lowered her voice and said, "Ah Qing, I want to kill someone." Yan Hanqing was a bit stunned. No one had ever called him Ah Qing. It was so intimate that he couldn't help but blush. He even forgot to stop Xiao Qing. Xiao Qing helped Little Bun learn how to walk. Her steps were slow, and her voice was slow as well. "I'm not a good person, but I still have a little conscience. Smell the wind. The smell is too strong, and it lingers at the tip of my nose, reminding me constantly of what happened." Yan Hanqing's nose wasn't as sharp as Xiao Qing's, but the difference wasn't much. He fell silent and suddenly couldn't say anything to stop them. After all, some people were rotten to the core. Not to mention seeing them with his own eyes, he could even kill them with his own hands. "Something will definitely happen tonight," Xiao Qing said firmly. Her intuition told her that Yan Hanqing didn't say anything and just followed Xiao Qing. There weren't many empty rooms, so when it was time to sleep, Xiao Qing and Gu Panpan slept in the same room. If it wasn't for the fact that Gu Panpan was tired during the day, Xiao Qing would probably have listened to the gossip until midnight. Gu Panpan slept soundly, but Xiao Qing didn't. She hugged Little Bun and quietly curled up on the bed. When it was midnight, suddenly a scream came from the room next to hers. Xiao Qing's face changed immediately. She quickly got up from the bed and carried Little Bun. She didn't care about Gu Panpan, who was still sleepy. She went out for no other reason than the scream came from the man of the couple. Xiao Qing had a premonition that something would happen tonight, but she didn't expect it to be an internal affair. Xiao Qing arrived very early, probably because she didn't sleep. Yan Hanqing and Gu Chuan were just as early as her. The boss and his men arrived a little late. When they arrived, Gu Chuan kicked open the door. Everyone was shocked when they opened the door. The man's lower body was still on the bed, but his upper body was already drooping to the ground. His eyes were wide open, and there were a few deep bloodstains on his face. His throat was torn open, and it was obvious that he was no longer alive. The woman was lying on top of him, making a strange chewing sound. When she heard the door open, the woman turned her head. Her face and mouth were covered in blood, and her face was pale. Her skin was already rotting. "Do it." Gu Chuan's face changed. He pointed his finger, and the ice power was quickly displayed. The woman's feet were quickly frozen, and her feet were frozen together with the ground. The woman had just turned into a zombie, so her reaction was slower. She was stunned for a moment, and then suddenly became angry. She lifted her feet, and the ice under her feet cracked. Xiao Qing didn't say anything, but the vines just wrapped around her feet, and with a strong struggle, broke. At this time, Yan Hanqing was already in front of the woman with a dagger. He stabbed the dagger into the woman's lower abdomen, and then he realized that the woman was already a zombie. It was useless to stab into her lower abdomen. He quickly pulled out the dagger, and the woman's hand with long shining nails slapped over. Yan Hanqing only had time to cross his hands in front of his chest, and then he was hit and sent flying. For some unknown reason, the woman's strength was much greater than that of ordinary zombies. She lifted her feet easily, and broke the ice and vines. She stamped her feet, and then she came in the direction of Gu Chuan and Xiao Qing. The boss didn't care about hiding his strength. He pointed his finger, and a fireball flew out. However, the fireball hit the woman, and was extinguished before it could burn. Xiao Qing casually took a machete from the hands of a person around him, and jumped up, and the machete fell on the woman's neck. The woman slightly tilted her body, and the machete cut into her collarbone, and got stuck. Xiao Qing had to let go, and the woman's claws met force with force. Xiao Qing had eaten so many spiritual stones, so his strength was naturally greater than the woman's. The woman took a step back, and howled angrily. Before she could shout a second time, Xiao Qing had already grabbed her arm, and threw her over his shoulder. The woman was heavily thrown to the ground, and rotten flesh splattered everywhere. Before she got up, Xiao Qing had already punched the back of the woman's head. The back of the woman's head was dented, and then it was her neck, the back of her heart, and finally the woman's whole body was embedded in the ground for several inches. Gu Panpan, who came late, swallowed his saliva. In fact, Xiao Qing was a strengthening superpower, wasn't he? Chapter 18. When Xiao Qing got up and stretched her waist, the woman had sunk deep into the ground, and her whole body was twitching slightly. Check carefully next time. Xiao Qing got up and looked at the man who died tragically on the ground. Many people seem to have the same bad habit. If I died, why should they still be alive? If I was bitten, what if I didn't become a zombie? For example, this woman, she had such a fluke mentality. In the end, she died, and so did her man. Another example was the people who almost killed half of the base. Gu Panpan and R2 were a little embarrassed. After all, they were the ones who checked, especially Gu Panpan, and her face was red. "I'm really sorry. I made a fool of myself." Xiao Qing smiled at the boss, and a dark light flashed in her eyes. The boss hurriedly said, "It's nothing. It's good that you are fine. Let's go. We have to get up early tomorrow." "Yes." Xiao Qing smiled, but when she passed by the boss, she suddenly attacked. She was very fast, and the boss was not prepared. In an instant, he was nailed to the wall by Xiao Qing with a machete. The machete went through the right side of his chest and directly hung him on the wall. The two people who followed him were stunned for a moment, and immediately prepared to attack. Yan Hanqing suddenly rushed to one of them, and the dagger in her hand mercilessly pierced into the man's eye socket. Gu Chuan and the other two people were stunned by Xiao Qing's sudden attack, especially R2. Gu Chuan's reaction was a little faster. He used his ice power, turned it into an ice blade, and pierced the third person's throat. There were only 3 people with superpowers. 2 were killed and 1 was injured. Although the boss was nailed to the wall, he was not dead. He glared at Xiao Qing and said fiercely, "What are you doing? I kindly took you in and treated you with hospitality, but you... What do you think I am doing?" Xiao Qing picked up a dagger and pointed it at Boss. When those people were eaten by you, they should have asked why, right? As soon as Xiao Qing said that, everyone present was shocked, whether it was Gu Chuan or the survivors who surrounded them. You. What did you say? The boss was a little flustered, but he still gritted his teeth and said, Why are you slandering me? I really don't understand. What do we have for you to scheme against us? Then let me ask you, what did you guys eat to survive until today? Xiao Qing asked coldly. The boss did not feel guilty at all. Of course it's food. We have a granary to rely on, so why should we be afraid of not having enough food? They're all lies. There is a speed-type variant zombie there. You don't dare to go there. When I came here, I felt that something was wrong. In ancient times, there were wars and corpses everywhere. There were many corpses that were eaten by wild dogs. Their bodies were like wild boars, and their eyes were cold. When I came here, I felt that their eyes were like those of wild dogs that ate human flesh. Xiao Qing said faintly, Of course, I can't be sure based on this alone. I just felt a little strange at that time. That night, the woman I met when I entered the door was gone, but there was a plate of meat on the table. The meat was fresh and tender, completely different from pork. Before Xiao Qing finished speaking, Atu had already held his stomach and vomited, because he ate the most meat. Suspicion became confirmation. After dinner, I walked around the yard, and the smell of blood was still there. It's not the first time you guys ate people, right? You're quite good at dealing with the remains. Xiao Qing sneered and said. So what? Seeing that he was exposed, the boss began to be unscrupulous. I saved them, and they deserve to die for me. What's more, they were just two-legged sheep, and they were eaten by me. Isn't it proper? Before he could finish his words, Yan Hanqing, who couldn't take it anymore, had already stabbed him from his cheek all the way to the back of his head. It didn't matter if he begged for mercy or shouted unscrupulously, he could only leave it for his next life. Xiao Qing frowned and glanced around. Is there anyone who wants to avenge them? The onlookers quickly shook their heads. Xiao Qing picked up Little Bun and walked back to her room, ignoring the corpses on the ground and walls. Sister Qing, why are you going back? Gu Panpan kicked the corpse on the ground with disgust. She had never thought that the people here would survive by eating human flesh. How many people had they eaten? Sleep, we'll leave tomorrow. Xiao Qing said without looking back. After all, it was night time, and it was not suitable to rush. Gu Panpan really did not want to stay in this place for a second longer. When she thought of the people around her who were used to eating human flesh, and then recalled that she had almost eaten human flesh at dinner, she could not help but feel disgusted. Let's go. Gu Chuan looked at Atu, who was vomiting and left. Gu Panpan immediately followed. Xiao Qing and Yan Hanqing arrived at the door one after another. Xiao Qing paused and smiled. Why, are you going to sleep in my room? Yan Hanqing immediately blushed and stammered. No, I've been following you. I forgot. Xiao Qing opened the door and looked at Yan Hanqing with a faint smile. Come in, I can't sleep anyway. Chapter 19. If you want to come in and sleep, just say so. Xiao Qing pursed her lips and deliberately said, The night is long, and I don't have the mood to sleep. It's good for us to have a heart-to-heart talk. I'm going back to sleep. Yan Hanqing stammered and ran back as if he was chased by a monster. Xiao Qing smiled and took the little bun back to her room. Before she could lie down, Gu Panpan came to Xiao Qing with a quilt. Probably because Xiao Qing was the only girl in the room, she felt safer with Xiao Qing. Gu Panpan tidied up the bed and crawled under the quilt. Probably because she was still a little scared, Gu Panpan kept looking for a topic to talk about. My brother and I speculated that she might have been bitten by a zombie, or just scratched. Gu Panpan covered herself tightly and said in a low voice, This person is just full of luck. Maybe she thought that such a small wound wouldn't turn her into a zombie, so she hid it and finally killed her husband. Gu Panpan sighed, but I didn't expect that there would be so many survivors here, and I didn't expect that there would be people eating human flesh. Gu Panpan kept gossiping. Xiao Qing didn't feel sleepy at first, but now she was completely awake. She could only hope that Gu Panpan would quickly say that she was tired and go to sleep. In the middle of the night, probably because Gu Panpan said that she was tired, she actually fell asleep. Xiao Qing was really relieved. The next morning, Gu Panpan woke up and found that there was no one beside her. Xiao Qing had already taken the little bun to wash up. Gu Panpan quickly got up and packed her things, ready to leave this strange place. This time when they left, they didn't take anything, including people. After all, except for them, everyone here should have eaten human flesh. No one wanted to take someone who had eaten human flesh away. Although everyone was looking at them eagerly, they still gritted their teeth and left directly. Ignoring the expectant eyes behind them, the group embarked on the journey back. At noon, there was a haze and a small wind, reducing the visibility rapidly. Even the clouds in the sky were swallowed. No matter what, we have to go. It's too dangerous to stay here. Xiao Qing volunteered, I'll clear the way. The weather after the apocalypse had been very strange. Sometimes it was sunny, sometimes it suddenly rained, sometimes it was windy, and sometimes it was a thick fog. In short, it was very annoying. Xiao Qing walked forward while secretly counting the crystals in her inventory. She already had a lot of crystals in her hands, and there was also the crystal she just got from the woman's body. After absorbing these special crystals, Xiao Qing felt that she would definitely be promoted. However, it was safer to go back to the base to do it. After all, no one knew what would happen during the promotion. While walking, Xiao Qing seemed to see a familiar figure through the thick fog, but that figure only showed its face for a moment and then disappeared. That figure was too similar to Air Dai. Xiao Qing wanted to leave the car and grab that person to see if it was her Air Dai. However, now was not the time to think about it. Xiao Qing gave up the idea and continued walking. If it was really her Air Dai, they would meet sooner or later. While walking forward, Xiao Qing's car suddenly tilted violently to one side. Even if Xiao Qing turned the steering wheel, the car still hit a rock on the road. She got out of the car and saw that the tire was punctured. Moreover, it was directly hit by the car. There were piles of bones and remnants of weapons on the ground. She did not know who had punctured the tire. Xiao Qing frowned and asked, "Who knows how to fix this?" Yan Hanqing, who got out of the back seat, quickly said, "I know how to fix it." Then he carried the spare tire and walked over. Yan Hanqing began to fix the car after setting up the completely useless roadblock. The others also got out of the car. Xiao Qing frowned, guarding against any sneak attack. Xiao Qing was holding Little Bun. Suddenly, she heard a rustling sound approaching. She was immediately startled and guarded against the approaching zombies. But at this moment, the soil under Xiao Qing's feet suddenly loosened. Then, a flower suddenly appeared under her feet. The moment the pink and tender petals opened, Xiao Qing did not know what to say. Because the petals looked very pink and tender, they were very cute. The mouth of the petals was full of thorns. Xiao Qing even saw half of a zombie's arm hanging in the innermost part of the mouth. Man-eating flower? Xiao Qing was instantly stunned. She saw the huge flower suddenly open its mouth and bite towards her. Xiao Qing quickly retreated. The man-eating flower immediately pounced on her. The petals opened and closed, as if it wanted to immediately swallow Xiao Qing. It digested her like the arm in its mouth. Xiao Qing kept retreating, looking for a suitable weapon. The people behind her also quickly reacted to save Xiao Qing. All kinds of abilities quickly fell on the man-eating flower. However, other than blocking it for a while, they did not cause any damage. Xiao Qing picked up a rusty machete on the ground and carefully observed the man-eating flower. Generally speaking, plants should not move around. This man-eating flower had been using its long stem to chase after Xiao Qing to bite. If they left this area, the man-eating flower would definitely not chase after them. But once they left, they would have no choice but to take a longer route. At that time, the danger would increase, and it would be much later to go back. It was a headache. Chapter 20. Gu Pan Pan quickly leapt up and stood in front of Shao Qing, grabbing the head of the man-eating flower with one hand. Her left hand grabbed the upper calyx of the man-eating flower, and her right hand grabbed the lower calyx, forcibly stopping the flower head from closing. From Shao Qing's angle, she could see that Gu Pan Pan had used too much force, and that her muscles were as taut as a mouse. Gu Pan Pan was in such a hurry that she didn't see the barb in her left hand. The barb directly penetrated the back of her hand, and blood flowed down her palm. Tasting the scent of blood, the man-eating flower moved even more vigorously. It continued to struggle, causing Gu Pan Pan's forehead to be covered in sweat. Its thorns have an anesthetic effect. I can't hold on much longer. Quick. Tu and Gu Chuan quickly made their moves. One tried to use the soil to control the man-eating flower, while the other tried to use ice to slow it down, but both failed. The man-eating flower shook its head violently, and Gu Pan Pan, who was like a King Kong Barbie, was flung out. Luckily, Gu Chuan caught her. Without control, the man-eating flower opened its flower head and bit at Shao Qing. It seemed like it was going to swallow Shao Qing in one bite and slowly digest her. Shao Qing gritted her teeth and stabbed the knife she picked up into the man-eating flower's mouth. Unfortunately, she only managed to hold on for a second before it was bitten off. The inner wall of the flower secreted a kind of sulfuric acid, which eroded everything that entered its mouth. Gu Chuan was thrown to the ground by Gu Pan Pan. Seeing this, he shouted anxiously, "Shao Qing, you can find a way to subdue it." It was said that wood paranormals could subdue mutated plants for their own use, but most of them subdued relatively mild mutated plants. For example, those mutated medicinal plants were the favorite of wood paranormals because they could assist in healing. A wood paranormal had subdued a plant that emitted a stimulant-like fragrance. During a battle, it could improve his combat effectiveness and make him temporarily forget his pain. However, there were only a few who dared to subdue a mutated plant like the flower. Wood paranormals could subdue one plant at each level. If they subdued more than that, it would be beyond their control. Shao Qing happened to have not subdued any plants. That was why Gu Chuan asked her to give it a try. In the current situation, only Shao Qing could give it a try. Their abilities had no effect on the flower, and Gu Pan Pan was anesthetized. If they didn't give it a try, they would have to go the long way. Shao Qing took a deep breath and calmly dodged while studying the weakness of the piranha flower. She looked carefully and found that when the piranha flower attacked, it would subconsciously protect the slender flower stem. Its stem was tender green and looked more fragile than petals. It was estimated that it was like a human's neck, which was also a vital point. Shao Qing rolled forward, avoiding the sudden bite of the flower. Suddenly, she stretched out her 10 fingertips. The fingertips were rapidly lengthening. The gray and black fingernails reflected a cold luster. They were quickly and accurately inserted into the flower's stem. The green liquid immediately splashed out. The green liquid fell to the ground and immediately corroded the soil, not to mention that the back of Shao Qing's hand was corroded, leaving only dark red flesh. Shao Qing's flesh was dark red, darker than that of ordinary people. Especially the blood, which flowed very slowly and had a dark color. When it flowed out, it quickly solidified. She pinched the stem with all her might, completely ignoring the fact that her hands were corroded to a horrible state. The piranha flower's head was like a venomous snake that had its weak spot pinched. It struggled madly, but because of Shao Qing's position, it couldn't bite her. Shao Qing was also ruthless. Her 10 fingers sank into the flower's stem. The green liquid flowed more and more. The flower head struggled more and more fiercely. Finally, it fell to the ground, twitching, and the flower head was slightly biting. Seeing this, Shao Qing bit her wrist. The dark red blood flowed out and flowed into the wound of the flower's stem. Visible to the naked eye, the tender green flower stem was slowly eroded by the dark red. Shao Qing poured blood and used the wood power to control the flower. About 10 minutes later, when her forehead was covered with cold sweat, the twitching flower moved, turned into a broken light spot, and quickly poured into Xiao Qing's body. Xiao Qing's eyes darkened and she fainted. Her last consciousness was Yan Hanqing holding her in panic. She didn't know how long she had slept. Xiao Qing only felt that the power in her body had been rioting. She longed for power and fresh flesh. Instinct told her that she was evolving now. Instinct also told her that she could draw power from fresh flesh. There seemed to be the freshest flesh around her, with a very fragrant smell, constantly seducing her. Xiao Qing slowly woke up and couldn't help but want to bite the throat of the person next to her. She looked down and saw Yan Hanqing lying on her bed. The strong young man shrank into a ball and nested on a low stool with great effort. His eyes were dark. It seemed that he hadn't slept for a long time. The little bun was sleeping on the other side of Xiao Qing, holding her thigh and constantly smacking his lips. Xiao Qing quickly woke up and quickly took out a few crystals from the space, including the crystals left by the woman and the mutant zombie. She needed energy to evolve, otherwise, she would definitely fail this time. After absorbing a few crystals, Xiao Qing's body was once again filled with a feeling of fullness. She could clearly feel a wave of energy flowing through her body, constantly growing stronger. When it reached a certain point, it was as if a layer of film had been broken. The surging power quickly broke out, and Xiao Qing could hear her joints cracking. She knew that she had made a breakthrough. Not only had her wood power improved, but her physical fitness had also improved. With her strength and speed, ordinary strength paranormals might not be her match. Clenching her fist, Xiao Qing took a breath. The stronger she was, the more capital she had to protect her child. Her movements woke up Yan Hanqing, who was guarding beside her. Yan Hanqing opened his eyes vigilantly. After finding that it was Xiao Qing, he breathed a sigh of relief and said in a hoarse voice, "You're finally awake." "I slept for a long time?" Xiao Qing moved a little, but Yan Hanqing caught her hand and carefully tightened the bandage on her hand. "Your body temperature is very high. Gu Chuan said that your body is being transformed because of the promotion. You slept for more than 10 hours before your body temperature gradually dropped." Xiao Qing looked at the man's serious face and touched it. She said in a teasing tone, "You're so virtuous. You'd better marry early. How about considering me?" Chapter 21. Yan Hanqing couldn't help but turn his face, from his cheeks to his earlobes. He lowered his voice and said, "You slept for so long, aren't you hungry?" "It's okay." For Yan Hanqing to change the topic, Xiao Qing smiled. She was just joking. Since she was resurrected, Xiao Qing didn't believe that men have true feelings. Probably because Xiao Qing was indifferent, Yan Hanqing pursed his lips. After a long time, he said with a weak voice, "I don't deserve you." "What did you say?" Xiao Qing, who was immersed in her memories, raised her eyebrows. Yan Hanqing hurriedly said, "Nothing, I was talking to myself." Xiao Qing didn't say anything. She moved her legs and got off the bed. As soon as her feet touched the ground, she felt that she was different from before. That kind of body was full of power. The feeling of wanting to release it was really good. Even Xiao Qing felt that there was nothing that could stop her, but Xiao Qing also knew that there was always someone better. Too complacent was arrogant. She was still relatively self-aware. "Where are we now?" "Because you fainted, we didn't hurry, we just found a place to stop." Yan Hanqing looked at Xiao Qing's back. His eyes had a gentleness that he himself didn't know. Xiao Qing was the best woman he had ever met. She was not pretentious like those so-called socialites. She was real, beautiful, intelligent, and powerful. Even her every move was so free and easy that most people could only dream of. This kind of woman was like a cheetah in the grassland. Yan Hanqing didn't feel that he was worthy of her. It wasn't that he had low self-esteem, it was just like some flowers were too beautiful. He couldn't bear to reach out and pick them. "I dragged everyone down." Xiao Qing opened the door and found that they were in a house, probably because of the zombies. The original owner of the house was gone, so Xiao Qing and the others directly used it as a place to rest. Xiao Qing opened the door and saw Tu and Gu Chuan siblings playing cards in the yard. When they saw Xiao Qing come out, Gu Pan was the first to throw down the cards in her hand. "Sister Qing, you woke up. Great, you were unconscious. I couldn't eat or sleep well." Tu grabbed Gu Pan, her face flushed. "How can you be so shameless? I was about to win, you actually put down the cards." "Alright, stop fooling around." Gu Chuan patted the two of them and said to Xiao Qing, "How is it?" "My body feels pretty good. I've also successfully advanced to the next level. We can set off at any time." Xiao Qing clenched her fists and said, "We've been out for quite some time now. It's time to go back. Pack your things. We will leave in the afternoon." Gu Pan was also very excited, although this trip lost 2 people, but the 2 were ordinary people, and both of them had bad intentions. Gu Pan didn't feel that it was a pity. On the contrary, they had a lot of harvest. It could be said that they returned with a full load. So, after a week, they returned to the base. The most important thing was naturally to divide the loot. When they entered the city, what should be handed over was handed over, the rest all belonged to the 5 of them. Because there were 2 less people, and Xiao Qing's contribution was seen by everyone, the final distribution was 20%, that is to say, Xiao Qing and Yan Hanqing took 40%. This was indeed a surprise for the new members of the search team. Xiao Qing originally wanted to give 10% to Gu Chuan, his sister, and Tu, but they didn't want it. Gu Pan said, "Sister Qing, just take it, we have to team up in the future. You are already a level 2 wood ability user, some big search teams will want to recruit you, you must remember our team." Xiao Qing nodded, finally accepting the supplies. She gave half of it to Yan Hanqing. "This is your share, take it." Yan Hanqing would be lying if he said that he wasn't excited. Generally, the ordinary people in the search team were the family members of ability users, or people with skills, such as the young couple. The man knew how to repair cars, and the woman was a nurse, so the ability users were willing to take these people with them. Yan Hanqing didn't have any special skills, but he was able to get so many supplies with Gu Pan. For Xiao Qing's sake, Yan Hanqing knew very well, and in his heart, he was even more grateful to Xiao Qing. Xiao Qing took a look. There were a lot of things, and in the spirit of giving Buddha to the West, she immediately said, "You can't take it back alone, I'll help you." Yan Hanqing still wanted to refuse, but in the end, he realized that he really couldn't take it all by himself, and his face turned red. Before he could make a decision, Xiao Qing had already started the car. "Get in, idiot, why are you standing there like a fool?" Yan Hanqing hurriedly climbed into the car, and let Xiao Qing drive, sending him and the supplies to the tent where he and his mother lived. The place where ordinary people lived and the place where ability users lived were simply separated. Xiao Qing drove all the way, and she didn't encounter any resistance, only envious and jealous gazes. When he arrived outside the tent, Yan Hanqing's face changed. He quickly jumped out of the car, went around the tent, and carried his mother out of a pile of rubbish. The wound on the old woman's leg had rotted to the bone because it wasn't treated in time, and there were many flies on it. Yan Hanqing estimated that if he came back 2 days later, he would see the body covered with maggots, but even so, he still felt that his mother was dying. Yan Hanqing's eyes immediately turned red. He kicked open the curtain of the tent, and a voice immediately came from inside. "Who is it? Are you tired of living?" Chapter 22. A young man's head popped out of the tent. He had medium-length hair, with only a tuft of red hair in the middle. He had a cigarette in his mouth and looked very sloppy. As soon as he saw Yan Hanqing, the young man's expression changed slightly. Then he calmed down and said, "Oh, I was wondering who it was. I didn't expect you to come back alive." Yan Hanqing tried hard to suppress his anger. The place where ordinary people lived depended on their strength. In order to let his mother live comfortably, he didn't know how many fights he had to fight to win a big tent for 2 people. The man in front of him was his defeated opponent. It was said that he was a relative of a psychic. He never expected that after he left for a few days, this man would dare to come and take over his place and throw his mother out. As Yan Hanqing expected, The friend he asked to take care of his mother was hiding in the tent and looking at him with a pale face. You're back. It was obvious that the two of them thought that Yen Hanqing would die outside, so they came together to take over Yen Hanqing's place. After all, many search teams would also recruit some ordinary people as cannon fodder. The death rate of ordinary people as cannon fodder was very high, but they couldn't stand the high risk and also the high reward, so many ordinary people were willing to join. The two of them thought that Yen Hanqing was in such a situation. They didn't expect that Yen Hanqing would come back safely. Get out. Yen Hanqing's voice was low and hoarse. He gritted his teeth, and an endless storm was brewing in his eyes. The sloppy young man swallowed his saliva and straightened his neck, saying, "This is my territory. Who are you asking to get out?" Before he finished speaking, Yen Hanqing grabbed his collar and threw him out. After Yen Hanqing threw the man out, the first thing he did was to look for medicine under the bed. He hid the medicine that Xiao Qing gave him under the bed, but his friend knew. Even if he knew that he couldn't survive, Yen Hanqing still had a glimmer of hope. But when he lifted the sheet, Yen Hanqing saw that the bed was empty. He looked at his friend expressionlessly and asked, "Where's my medicine?" Who knows? The man took 2 steps back and looked at the young man for help. At that time, he was greedy and exchanged the medicine for points with the young man. He used the points to exchange for food and clothes. How could he give the medicine to Yen Hanqing? Yen Hanqing grabbed his collar, and the veins on his forehead bulged. He gritted his teeth and said, I trusted you. I entrusted my mother to you, but I didn't expect you to be an ungrateful bastard." After that, Yen Hanqing threw him out, and the young man who was about to get up fell to the ground again. Xiao Qing carried little Bun and walked in. She took a look at Yen Hanqing's mother and then shook her head. It was probably because she had been sick for a long time. When she was still in the military, she was often injured. Even after she retired, she could be considered half a doctor. Now, anyone with eyes could see that Yen Hanqing's mother was at most a breath away. It was a miracle that she could hold on until Yen Hanqing came back. Yen Hanqing could see it too. He hugged his mother tightly and lowered his head. After a while he said with a choked voice, "When I was young, my father passed away early. It was my mother who raised me. When I was admitted to the military school, she borrowed money from everywhere and sold her house and land to raise my living expenses and tuition. At that time, I swore that I would make my mother's life better, but I didn't do it. When the apocalypse happened, I couldn't protect her. Although she wasn't eaten by zombies, she almost died in the mouth of mutant animals. Later, she was transferred to the base. I didn't have the ability to treat her. In the end, I didn't let her live a good life." Yen Hanqing's voice became more and more hysterical until the old woman gently grasped his hand. "Is Ah Qing back?" "Mom, it's me. Yen Hanqing saw that the old woman had some consciousness, so he quickly grabbed her hand. He was afraid that he would frighten the old woman, so he lowered his voice and said, "Mom, are you okay?" "That's good." Yen Hanqing's mother kept smiling. She held Yen Hanqing's hand tightly and sighed. "I don't have any regrets in my life. The only regret is that I didn't get to see you get married and have children. Ah Qing, if you find a daughter who is willing to be with you in the future, you have to treat her better. Once a woman decides to marry a man, she's entrusting her life to him." "Mom, I know. Yen Hanqing buried his head in the old woman's arms and his voice became more and more choked. The old woman touched his head and said regretfully, "I can't let it go. Auntie, don't worry. I will take care of him for you in the future." Xiao Qing couldn't help but say. The old woman glanced at Xiao Qing and smiled. There was no regret on her dirty old face. She gently pinched Xiao Qing's little finger, as if she wanted to make a promise with her. But before their fingers were hooked, the old woman had already died. Yen Hanqing's body trembled. He buried himself in the old woman's arms and didn't cry at all. But his back, which was always straight, trembled and showed some weakness. Xiao Qing didn't say anything. She didn't know how to comfort him. She just silently looked at the two people who were preparing to escape outside the door. Life, it should be paid with life, right? Chapter 23. However, Shao Qing didn't make a move because Yan Hanqing had already made a move. He gently placed his mother on the ground. His movements were so careful that it was as if his mother was still alive. Then, he strode out of the door expressionlessly. At this moment, the two men on the ground had already gotten up, especially Yan Hanqing's friend. He had already turned around and ran far away. Shao Qing didn't plan to avenge Yan Hanqing, but she also didn't plan to let him escape. She tied the man's ankles with a rattan and dragged him back to where he stood. He wanted to run again, but Yan Hanqing had already grabbed him and punched him hard on the back. Shao Qing felt pain in her internal organs. The man screamed, staggered, and fell to the ground. Then, he was beaten to death by Yan Hanqing. Yes, he was beaten to death. His cervical vertebrae and neck were broken into at least 6 or 7 pieces. His whole body was limp on the ground. He was still hanging on to his last breath. Once his last breath was gone, he would be a dead man. Yan Hanqing was very restrained. He just let the man be on the verge of death and then threw him aside. He also wanted the man to experience the good feeling of being unable to move after being seriously injured. He could only wait for death on the side. Then, he turned to look at the young man. He was frightened, especially when he saw that Yan Hanqing looked calm, but in fact, his eyes were already red. Don't mess around. My cousin is a paranormal. Don't think that you can be unscrupulous just because you found a little girl to back you up. The young man said sternly. That's what I should say to you. Yan Hanqing clenched his teeth and threw himself at the youth. The youth was much stronger than the person on the ground who had turned into a pile of minced meat. At the very least, he could resist Yan Hanqing for a while. Gradually, the two men's arms, faces, and all exposed parts of their bodies were covered with wounds. Especially the young man, his face was bruised and swollen. Even if his mother came to see him, she probably wouldn't be able to recognize him. His physical strength was not as good as Yan Hanqing's, who was born in the military. He screamed because Yan Hanqing found a loophole and broke one of his legs. The protruding bone cut through his pants. Blood quickly thickened and dripped down. Yan Hanqing took the opportunity to grab his hair, which was the strange-colored hair, and then kept knocking his head on the ground. The ground was paved with blue stone slabs. The first time he knocked on it, the young man's head was already splattered with blood. Yan Hanqing did not stop. He grabbed the young man's hair and knocked on it 4 or 5 more times. Each time, the young man's head was covered with blood. When the young man was lifted up for the last time, he was unconscious. He kept muttering, "My cousin is a superpowered man. My cousin is a superpowered man." Shao Qing glanced at him. His legs were dangling in a crooked position. It was obvious that Yan Hanqing had broken them all. His face was covered in blood, and his front teeth had all fallen out from kissing the ground again and again. He looked a little pitiful, but Yan Hanqing obviously wasn't going to let him go. He lifted the young man's neck and quickly broke his cervical vertebra. With a crack, the young man was dead. Yan Hanqing threw the young man's body aside, then knelt on the ground weakly. He covered his face with one hand and didn't make any sound. Shao Qing could sympathize with him. She patted him on the shoulder and released the man-eating flower that she had subdued before. The man-eating flower's huge flower head kept swaying. Under Shao Qing's command, it swallowed the young man's body, and then the man who was still breathing. There was a way to destroy the body. Obviously, the man-eating flower was a good choice to destroy the body. The man-eating flower's huge flower head just wriggled a little and ate the two people. It closed the flower head and began to digest. After a while, it would spit out the bones that it couldn't digest. After doing all this, Shao Qing stood quietly beside Yan Hanqing, waiting for him to recover. Although Shao Qing didn't have a family, she could understand the feeling of suddenly losing a mother. Especially Yan Hanqing and his mother had depended on each other for many years. That kind of relationship was probably deeper than a normal mother and son. After a long time, Yan Hanqing raised his listless face, turned to Shao Qing and said, "Am I very useless? I can't protect anything." In the end, even my mother was in a miserable situation. She didn't enjoy a day of happiness in her life. Yan Hanqing sneered and said, "I'm a waste. I can't do anything. I can only passively accept everything." If it was another person, they might be considerate and comfort him, saying something like, "You're not a waste. You're actually very good." But Shao Qing didn't. She looked condescendingly at the decadent Yan Hanqing and said in a low voice, "The end of the world is like this. When you're weak, you can only passively accept the fate of being prostituted. So why are you here feeling sorry for yourself instead of working hard to become a strong person? You may feel that you can't protect anything now, but you're much better than many people who can't even protect themselves." Shao Qing's voice was cold, but with a concern that couldn't be ignored. "Now, get up, pull yourself together. Sooner or later, you'll be able to push down this damn fate and turn it around." Chapter 24. After a long time, Yan Hanqing suddenly smiled. He wiped his face, which was already splashed with a lot of blood. After he wiped it, the blood was all gone. "Thank you." Shao Qing didn't say anything. She just lifted her chin, indicating that Yan Hanqing's mother was still in the tent. Yan Hanqing carried his mother out. Suddenly, he knelt down and kowtowed to Shao Qing 3 times. Shao Qing was stunned. "What are you doing? My mother has never enjoyed any happiness in her life. She only has one wish, which is to be buried with my father." Yan Hanqing blushed as he spoke. "I know it's very difficult to travel from here to H City at this time of the year. You want me to accompany you to send your mother there?" Shao Qing looked at Yan Hanqing's difficult expression and continued. Yan Hanqing nodded and said embarrassedly, "I know it's difficult for you to do this, but, please." Shao Qing hesitated for a moment. Yan Hanqing also saw Shao Qing's hesitation. He gritted his teeth and said, "Miss Shao, you've already helped me a lot. By right, I shouldn't make such an unreasonable request. But among the capable people I know, you're the only one. Miss Shao, whether you agree or not, my life is yours in the future." Shao Qing looked at Yan Hanqing's determined face. After a long while she said, "Okay, I'll send you there." It was not that she suddenly became kind, but in this post-apocalyptic world, she also wanted to have a few companions. Although Yan Hanqing didn't have any superpower, he was upright and determined. He was also a soldier, so he was more suitable for companions. Moreover, Yan Hanqing was now alone. Even if Yan Hanqing discovered her secret, it would be more convenient to kill him. This kind of thing shouldn't be delayed. "Let's meet at my house in the afternoon and set off." Shao Qing turned around and was ready to leave. Then, she heard Yan Hanqing thank her again. From the beginning, she did have a good impression of Yan Hanqing. But that good impression came from Yan Hanqing's standard military temperament and silent and upright character. Now, Shao Qing's good impression of Yan Hanqing increased because of his affection. Therefore, she chose to trust Yan Hanqing. After Shao Qing returned to her residence, she arranged the food and let Little Bun absorb some crystals. Then, she contacted Gu Panpan and his sister. Although Gu Panpan was a chatterbox, Shao Qing subconsciously felt that the two people's character was not bad. Especially Gu Chuan, he seemed to be more reliable. This time, she and Yan Hanqing were going to H City. The journey was indeed long. If she was alone, then protecting herself was a simple matter. If she also had to protect Yan Hanqing, it would be more troublesome if they encountered some special circumstances. Therefore, Shao Qing prepared to contact Gu Panpan and Gu Chuan. After a simple explanation, Shao Qing said that this trip was not small. She would take out some resources as compensation. Even if Gu Panpan and Gu Chuan chose not to go, Xiao Qing would feel that it was normal. Unexpectedly, Gu Panpan and Gu Chuan just exchanged glances, and decisively agreed, "Sister Qing, are we leaving this afternoon?" I'm afraid that the body will rot after a long time. It's better to leave early and let Yan Hanqing's mother be buried early. Xiao Qing said. My brother and I have no problem at all. We have nothing to do, so we are bored to death. Gu Panpan said with a smile. However, Xiao Qing remembered this favor from Gu Panpan and her sister. After all, they had only known each other for a short period of time. They had only gone on a mission together. For Gu Panpan and her sister to give her so much face and risk so much to accompany her on a long journey was already very loyal. Then let's talk about the reward. Xiao Qing estimated for a moment and then said, "The place we're going to is quite far this time, and I don't have much food on hand. I'll give you 20 caddies of fresh vegetables, 50 caddies of grain, and 10 boxes of anti-inflammatory medicine." Gu Panpan originally wanted to refuse. After all, she really liked Xiao Qing, and Xiao Qing was also very capable. It was good for them to have a good relationship with Xiao Qing. However, when she heard that Xiao Qing was going to give them anti-inflammatory medicine, Gu Panpan swallowed her words. Paranormals couldn't be infected by zombies, but they could still be injured. If the wound was infected and serious, they could die. Therefore, medicine was not only a necessity in the post-apocalyptic world, but also a very precious existence because the production line was broken. Sister Qing, I won't say anything pretentious. If you need anything in the future, just call us. Gu Panpan patted her chest and said. Xiao Qing invited them to have a meal at home. It was cooked by Xiao Qing herself. Although she had stopped eating normal food, her cooking skills were still very good in the past. With the addition of the fresh vegetables she had obtained from the base, the meal looked, smelled, and tasted great. Gu Panpan praised her for being virtuous. In the afternoon, the three of them packed up their things and went to find Yan Hanqing. When everyone was together, they were ready to leave. Because they were going on a long trip this time, unlike the last time when they were near a survivor base, Gu Panpan and her sister brought a lot of things. They drove an off-road car, picked up Xiao Qing, and headed towards Yan Hanqing's place. However, when they arrived at Yan Hanqing's place, Xiao Qing saw an acquaintance. It was none other than Li Jing, who had drugged her last time. Li Jing was still wearing a pair of glasses. He looked very gentle, but what he did was not gentle at all. There was a little blood at the corner of his mouth, and he seemed to be angry. He threw a fireball at Yan Hanqing. Something must have happened to make him come to Yan Hanqing. However, he underestimated Yan Hanqing's fighting ability, so he was angry after being injured. Xiao Qing pushed open the car door and quickly jumped out. The green rattan had already wrapped around Yan Hanqing, isolating him from the fireball. It was obvious that Li Jing was prepared to take Yan Hanqing's life. Xiao Qing's eyes narrowed slightly. Her eyes were gloomy. To put it bluntly, she was a protective person. Yan Hanqing was already a companion she had chosen, but Li Jing was trying to kill him. It would be strange if she was not angry. What are you doing? It's you, Miss Xiao. As soon as he saw Xiao Qing, Li Jing's eyes changed. He said with a hint of eagerness, Miss Xiao, you shouldn't have intervened. He killed my cousin. It's natural for me to avenge him, isn't it? I'm sorry. Your cousin was killed by me, and I asked him to do it. Xiao Qing protected Yan Hanqing behind her without leaving a trace. She said lightly, How dare you attack an ordinary person? If you don't agree, let's have a try. Chapter 25. Li Jing's face changed. To be honest, he didn't care about his cousin's death, but it was related to his reputation. The whole survivor base knew that his cousin was killed by an ordinary person. If he didn't do anything about it, wouldn't everyone step on his face in the future? However, Li Jing didn't want to fight with Xiao Qing because of a useless cousin. After all, he wanted to pursue Shao Qing. Therefore, when Shao Qing said that, Li Jing's face darkened. He deliberately ignored Shao Qing's words and said to Yan Hanqing, hiding behind a woman, "Are you still a man? Attacking an ordinary person, are you still a man?" Gu Panpan stepped forward and rolled her eyes at Li Jing. "If you have the guts, then go and fight a high-level paranormal. Why are you acting like a B***** here? You." Li Jing was a gloomy person, so he didn't quarrel with Gu Panpan. He just said with a gloomy face, "I don't care who he is. I only know that he killed my cousin, so he is my enemy. It doesn't matter if my enemy is an ordinary person or a strong paranormal, I will take action. For me, I don't care about their strength or identity, but if they are my enemy. Put yourself in my shoes, if an ordinary person killed your brother, would you not take action?" Li Jing was not stupid. He also knew Gu Panpan and Gu Chuan. Gu Chuan was a level 1 paranormal, but it was said that he was on the verge of breaking through. Gu Panpan was also a level 1 paranormal. He couldn't offend them directly, but he could still make some sarcastic remarks. Nonsense. How could an ordinary person kill her cousin? Gu Panpan still wanted to say something, but Shao Qing stopped her. "It seems that I shouldn't stop you." Before Li Jing could rejoice, she heard Shao Qing continue, "But, don't even think about making a move against Yan Hanqing today. I won't interfere unless you beat me." When Li Jing heard this, she said, "All right, let's spar then." After all, Shao Qing had just arrived at the base, and it was said that she was only a level 1 wood-type paranormal. The attack power of a wood-type paranormal was weaker than that of a fire-type paranormal, not to mention that he was already at the peak of level 1 and was about to break through to level 2. Therefore, Li Jing was not worried that he would lose to Shao Qing. He even imagined that after he showed his strength, Shao Qing might fall in love with him. After all, whether it was before or after the apocalypse, it was easier for the strong to capture a woman's heart. Shao Qing looked around. This place was relatively empty, so she said, "There's no need to choose a place. Let's do it here." "Okay." Li Jing nodded. "Then let's start." Before he could finish his sentence, a fair fist landed on his face, shattering the glasses he was using to show off. Immediately after, Li Jing felt a sharp pain in his lower abdomen and was sent flying. Li Jing was stunned the whole time. He did not even have time to release his power before he became a punching bag. Even when he was still in the air, Shao Qing appeared behind him and punched him heavily in the back. The sound of bones breaking was accompanied by Li Jing's twisted and silent expression. When he reacted to the pain and released his power, Shao Qing had already grabbed his neck from behind and threw his body to the ground. The fireball that had just condensed was scattered. Then, Shao Qing accurately and ruthlessly pressed down on a certain part of Li Jing's back. The broken bones instantly pierced Li Jing's heart and lungs. Li Jing only realized in a second before he died that Shao Qing wanted to kill him. Shao Qing casually threw the body to the man-eating flower that had been waiting for a long time. Then she twisted her neck and said calmly, "Let's go." Gu Panpan, Gu Chuan. The only person who was calm was probably Yan Hanqing, who knew how cruel Shao Qing was. He no longer counted how much he owed Shao Qing because he had already given his entire being to Shao Qing. So, he did not say anything more. He just pushed a simple corpse cart made of a bed and a dining cart shelf and moved his mother onto the cart. In order to prevent Yan Hanqing's mother's body from rotting, Gu Chuan used his power to freeze Yan Hanqing's mother. A group of people randomly accepted an exploration mission and left the base. Before getting on the cart, Shao Qing broke the petals of the man-eating flower as if she was checking the teeth of a pet and took out a foreign energy crystal. This was also one of the benefits of the man-eating flower. Those who were eaten by it, whether zombies or superpowered people, would be forced to leave the crystal for Shao Qing. If the man-eating flower could talk, it would probably cry for a while. After all, the essence was in that small crystal. Then, after it had a master, it would have to hand over the biggest meat for 3 meals. It was simply miserable. When Shao Qing left the survivor base, someone who had been hiding not far from the base quietly followed her. you're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.